Chapter 28:30. The little stoic was a person of action. After agreeing to leave the day after tomorrow with Qin Qi and Lu Jing, she followed Mo Lian's group to the training field. Senior Xuanji's cultivation is profound, so she probably wasn't forced to go to the lower star domain by her enemies. Arbor said aloofly. She probably traveled everywhere to relieve her boredom due to her emotional trauma. She finally settled down on Sikong planet, Mo Lian analyzed. The word love does a lot of harm. Qi Xianxian pretended to be tender and sighed faintly. Beside her, the little fatty involuntarily shuddered. Xianxian, can you not be so sentimental? Given Xianxian's temperament, when she acted in such a manner, it was truly a bit shocking. Humph. Qi Xianxian rolled her eyes at him. Senior Xuanji's two senior brothers aren't normal people. Duan Yu nodded and said, there are 100 first-generation disciples in the Xuanji school, and each one of them probably has profound cultivation. That was to say, as long as Xuanji was willing, she could summon these people to serve her at any time. Why would she be forced to leave the divine province by her enemies? Senior Xuanji actually just went out to relieve her boredom and leave this sad place of the divine province. She probably didn't want to come back. Senior Xuanji's lifespan was up, so she naturally left this world, Arbor said slowly. Qin Qi and Lu Jing should also be aware of this. I know what they're thinking. The little stoic was quick-witted and said with certainty, life is bitter and short, and their obsessions are too deep. They wasted hundreds of years in closed-door cultivation like ostriches, not daring to hear or see anything in the world. If all this wasted time was used to accompany the dejected Xuanji to travel everywhere to relieve her boredom. The little stoic paused in her steps and looked up at the warm sun. Then they wouldn't be so regretful when they think about it now. That's why they spent 30 extremely miserable years in Beiwang Valley. In reality, they were punishing themselves for wasting time and losing the most memorable period of their lives. Everyone was taken aback, and then they nodded repeatedly in a trance. The little fellow was more thorough than anyone else. Everyone was wholeheartedly convinced by her analysis. These two idiots. Qi Xianxian shook her head, they are punishing themselves in North Gaze Valley. Do you think they can catch up with time? Everyone sighed, only to hear the little girl say expressionlessly, Xuanji has already let go of her last days on Sikong planet. The ones who can't let go are the two fools who are obsessed. Hence, they found something for themselves to do and hunted down Xuanji's former enemies. When they finished off their last enemy in North Far Valley, they were also at a loss. How pitiful and sad. Xiao Mu shook her small head. She had given the two old men an unusual task to do. Presumably, they would not have time to think about it in the future. Not only did he save her, the little sect leader, but he also enriched the lives of the two elders, killing two birds with one stone. Jojo, should we call you second sect leader Qiao in the future? Qi Xianxian suddenly laughed out loud. The veins on the little guy's forehead throbbed violently. Second sect master, this title is really too weird. Then won't Jojo's descendants be called third and fourth sect masters in the future? Everyone held back their laughter and looked at the little fatty. Little fatty, don't run. Arbor jumped up and chased after the little fatty with clenched fists. Jojo, don't worry, we won't waste time. We will definitely advance with you. Chapter 28:31. The sun hung high in the sky, and its rays were blazing. Today was the first day of the competition, so it was naturally a preliminary selection. There really wasn't much to see. The entire practice field was divided into 10 martial arts stages, and the competition would be held simultaneously. When Arbor and the others arrived, the competition was in full swing. According to Holy Sun Mi Yan's explanation, the Imperial Academy would select 30 students with decent cultivation and bring them into the Sun-Moon mystic realm to search for treasures. On the contrary, Xiao Mu disapproved of that treasure hunt or whatever. It wasn't the first time the Sun-Moon mystic realm opened, and the people from the Sun-Moon Shrine had entered who knew how many times. Who the hell knew what was left inside the Sun-Moon mystic realm? On the other hand, Little Fatty and the others were rather interested. As soon as they reached the arena, they waved at Arbor and said, "Jojo, we're going to compete first." There were 10 martial arts stages, so they could register for the competition at any of them. Duan Yu didn't have much interest in the Sun-Moon mystic realm, but since everyone was going, it was naturally pointless for him to stay at the Imperial Academy alone. Hence, he thought that it would be good to get a spot and train with them. Hence, he also waved his paw at Arbor and followed Little Fatty to the martial arts stage on the side. Ali, like a butterfly flitting through flowers, Commandery Princess Xiang Chang dashed to Duan Yu and cheerfully exclaimed, "I finally see you again." Duan Yu didn't even bother to look at her and brushed past her. "Don't block the way." However, Commandery Princess Xiang Chang didn't mind his icy attitude at all and chuckled as she followed him. "You're also here to participate in the competition for spots, right? Let's go together, okay? Ali, when we enter the Sun-Moon mystic realm, let's form a team together, okay? Although my cultivation isn't high, my attainments in medicinal pills are pretty good. If we form a team, I can provide you with pills, Ali." Ali. Commandery Princess Xiang Chang stomped her feet and hastily chased after him. However, Duan Yu walked faster and faster, and he arrived at a martial arts stage in the blink of an eye. Both anxious and angry, Commandery Princess Xiang Chang chased after him. She almost bumped into someone head-on. "Hey!" Xiangchang Commandery Princess paused and stood still. When she saw who it was, she couldn't help but feel angry. "Huanxiu, what are you doing?" Wu Huanxiu couldn't bear to look at this stupid woman. "Xiangchang, Prince Chen is ignoring you. Why do you keep chasing after him?" "Who said that Brother Ali is ignoring me?" Xiangchang Commandery Princess stomped her feet and said, "Even if Brother Ali ignores me now, it doesn't mean that he will ignore me in the future. As long as I work hard enough, I'll definitely be able to impress him." Wu Huanxiu sighed and rolled her eyes. "Don't be so busy. Why don't you not go to the Sun-Moon Mystery Realm? That place is quite dangerous." "No way. If Brother Ali wants to go, I must go with him." Xiangchang Commandery Princess hurriedly pushed Wu Huanxiu away. "Don't stop me. I still have to go on stage for the assessment." "You." Wu Huanxiu rolled her eyes and muttered, "You really don't get rewarded for being kind." Her gaze followed the crowd and landed on the little stoic, who was leisurely watching the show from the side. Judging from Holy Sun Mi Yan's tone, this crown princess of the divine province had long obtained a blank jade tablet to enter the mystic realm. She came to watch the competition purely to join in the fun. Truly, different people had different fates. Wu Huanxiu pursed her lips. She still had to fight bitterly later. Lord Holy Sun has arrived. Chapter 28-32. Arbor looked back and saw Holy Sun Mi Yan slowly walking over from the parted crowd with a cold and handsome face, wearing an ethereal white robe. He truly looked like an old swindler. This Holy Sun's age was probably around 100 years old. All the students stepped forward to greet Holy Sun Mi Yan. The saint had a cold expression on his face as he nodded at the people around him. His gaze also landed on the little stoic through the crowd, and his brows involuntarily creased. Holy Sun Mi Yan simply felt unbearable because he couldn't eat or sleep well these past 2 days. Wherever this Sir Holy Sun went, he would be revered and treated with hospitality. Only this black-hearted couple, Mo Lien and Arbor, would dare to treat him like this? Divine Province's Crown Prince, Crown Princess, you came here so early in the morning. Do you also want to compete on stage? As soon as Holy Sun Mi Yen finished speaking, a weapon fell to the ground with a clang from the martial arts stage next to them. Everyone raised their heads to look at the guy who had dropped his weapon during the battle. That child's face was ashen as he looked in Arbor's direction in horror. Fuck, this punk didn't drop his weapon because he heard the words, Crown Princess, right? Sir Jojo expressionlessly glanced at the martial arts stage before retracting his gaze and walking to the other stages. He wasn't interested in watching two weaklings compete. The little Crown Princess didn't even say a word to Mi Yen, angering Holy Sun Mi Yen so much that his saint-like handsome face almost couldn't maintain its facade. On the side, the little priest couldn't resist whispering, Sir Holy Sun, it'll be fine if we don't provoke that little fiend. Holy Sun Mi Yen couldn't resist punching that priest's head. Shut up. Everyone's mouths twitched, and they felt that the noble and lofty image of Sir Holy Sun seemed to have faded away. Mi Yan's current thoughts should be, so angry, so angry, so angry. Realizing that his actions just now were somewhat inappropriate, he turned his head with a cold expression and asked the instructor beside him, how's the competition going? The audition will probably be completed in the afternoon. Right now, the 10 stages have already been through more than 10 battles. The one currently in first place is the Duan clan's third young master, Duan Tianya. Good. A thunderous roar erupted in front of a martial arts stage. The moment Arbor and Mo Lien walked over, they happened to see a student being knocked down from the ring. He rolled on the ground and landed in front of them. His body trembled for a long time, but he couldn't stand up. Third young Master Duan is too amazing. Third young Master Duan. Third young Master Duan. Below the battle stage, a group of third young Master Duan's male and female fans screamed and laughed. Third young Master Duan already has 850 points. It's currently ranked first. As expected of my third young Master Duan. Wah wah wah, look at his stern face. It's truly handsome and unrestrained. All kinds of love-struck voices assaulted them. With a cold face, the little stoic pushed aside two women who were praising third young Master Duan with extravagant praise. Please make way. This cold face could very easily extinguish everyone's boiling emotions. Those two women were stupefied, and their screams and cheers were doused in their throats by the little stoic's cold water. Mo Lien lowered her eyes in amusement. Chapter 28:33. Duan Tinya hugged his sword as he stood on the stage, his cold gaze sweeping over the stoic face and Prince Mo. His gaze landed behind the two of them as he jumped off the stage with a whoosh. Third young Master Duan isn't going to continue. Are you dumb? As long as third young Master Duan is standing on this stage, who would dare challenge him? Of course third young Master Duan can only walk from one stage to another and find his own opponent. That's true. There aren't any rules in this competition anyways. The more consecutive victories, the greater the number of points gained. Third young Master Duan is so young and about to break through to the spirit realm. There probably aren't many people in the entire academy who can match him in strength. I can't even count how many consecutive victories third young Master Duan has had. Third young Master Duan is here. Third young Master Duan is here. The students watching from the other side of the stage started cheering. Not all students were allowed to participate in the competition. Those who were participating were mostly from the Hall of Cultivation. Those from the other support subjects were basically done for. Those with a decent cultivation base could still give it a try, but those with a weak cultivation base should just stay put and watch the show. Although the academy didn't have any requirements for the selection, none of those who signed up were below the 6th level. Qi Xianxian, for example, had just reached the 6th level. She'd been booed the first 2 times when she'd gone up to compete. However, everyone was a bit dumbfounded when they met. Although this little girl's cultivation wasn't all that great, she could easily kill a 9th level spirit master. The main reason was because the little girl had 2 beasts on her first move. Once Xian went up on stage, she summoned her spirit beast, the golden mane lion, without a second thought. This spirit beast was awe-inspiring, and judging from its attacks and speed, it looked like it was about to break through to the 15th level of the spirit realm. This wasn't the end of it. The most frightening thing was that the little girl waved her hand again, and a snow eagle with shocking speed immediately pounced out from beside her. Why did she have 2 contracted beasts? This was what everyone didn't understand. Those who were knowledgeable immediately understood after a glance. They pointed at the faintly discernible summon character on the snow eagle's forehead and exclaimed, "It's a summoned beast. This little girl has a summoned beast by her side. Oh my god. This little 6th rank spirit master actually had 2 beasts protecting him. How was he going to fight?" Qi Xian was a smart kid and she was also very smart. She jumped down from the ring after 1 round and went to challenge the level 6 and level 7 spirit masters in the other rings. As a result, his points naturally soared, and the momentum of his growth was not weak. Everyone quickly realized that there were quite a few nouveau riche students among this batch of freshmen. There were quite a few people who could summon their beasts in one go. What's going on? Could it be that these days, summoning charms were like cabbages that could be picked up at will? Everyone couldn't believe their eyes. Some students even reached out to rub their eyes and pinched their arms hard. It doesn't hurt. I feel like I'm dreaming. Stop fucking bullshitting. You pinched my arm, why would it hurt? I see summoned beasts everywhere. What's going on? Is the Jin Duobao auction house selling summoning charms again recently? Dream on. The Jin Duobao auction house sold a summoning charm for an astronomical price a few years ago, and that was because the family was in urgent need of money. Even the talisman patrician families can't draw summoning charms anymore. Do you think summoning charms are cabbages? Chapter 28-34. Who said that a talisman aristocratic family can't draw summoning talismans? A student shouted defiantly. That's because the Mu family of the Divine Land can't draw summoning talismans. In Artsangzhou, the 8th young master of the Qi family can draw summoning talismans. Exactly. Everyone was discussing animatedly. Suddenly, someone shouted, 3rd young master Duan is going to challenge someone again. 3rd young master Duan is awesome. Duan Tianya turned a deaf ear to the shouts and clamor around him. He walked directly to the martial arts arena, and his pitch-black eyes were extremely deep as he looked at a young man on the martial arts arena. Whoosh! The moment Duan Tianya jumped onto the fighting ring, the crowd around him shouted excitedly again. 3rd young master Duan is going to challenge. The crowd lowered their voices. Obviously, they were not familiar with who the young man on the fighting ring was. However, the young man was wearing a close-fitting school uniform and looked very handsome. His noble and elegant temperament seemed to be faintly superior to 3rd young master Duan's. Who is that? He seems to be this year's freshman. He's not from our divine land. Wow, how dare he challenge Prince Qin of Artsangzhou? Ah. This is Prince Qin, the one from Tsangzhou who has outstanding talent. Rongli was in the crowd and looked at the 2 young men standing opposite each other on the fighting ring with a complicated expression. A faint coldness flashed across his eyes. He didn't expect that the people who had chased and intercepted this guy all the way were useless. They were all a bunch of good-for-nothings. Rongli didn't want to watch anymore. When he was about to turn around and leave, he saw the crown prince and the crown princess standing not far behind him. Of course, he couldn't pretend that he didn't see them. He could only force a smile and walked forward to greet them. Crown Prince, Crown Princess, I've heard a lot about you. You are. A trace of surprise appeared in Emolien's eyes. This made Ronly feel like he was being put on the spot. What the hell? He was really a crown prince from a corner of the lower star area. He couldn't even recognize the crown prince of Tsang Prefecture. The corner of Ronly's mouth twitched as he suppressed the displeasure in his heart. He cupped his hands and said with a smile, I am Ronly, Ronly's elder brother. When the little stoic heard this person's name, she immediately turned hostile and mercilessly threw an icicle at him. Ronly was stunned. In the past 2 days, he had seen and heard very clearly that the crown princess of the divine land was not to be trifled with. So he just came to greet him politely. Was there something wrong with the crown princess of the divine land? To think that he would suddenly attack him. Was she going to argue with everyone she met? With Ronly's cultivation, he naturally couldn't deal with the little stoic. Fortunately, he always had an expert by his side. Upon seeing this, a woman with a slender and well-developed figure immediately pounced forward and blocked the little stoic's wave of attacks with a wave of her hand. She said gravely, the crown princess of the divine province, please stop. Su Yonyang. Block her for me. Ronly was livid. He turned to glare at Emolien and said, Crown Prince of the Divine Province, you better give me an explanation. You're that Tsang Prefecture's Crown Prince who sent people to hunt down Duan Yu and insisted on killing him. The little stoic's face was cold. Ronly's expression changed several times, and he quickly said, I'm afraid you misunderstood something. Ronly is my younger brother, so I naturally wouldn't do such a deranged thing. I just got home. Wait. Chapter 28:35. Quibble. The little stoic's raised hand was suddenly gently grasped by Emolien. He turned to smile at her before looking up at Ronly and asking, Tsangzhou's crown prince, aren't you leaving yet? Were they waiting to be humiliated if they didn't leave? Ronly's expression was extremely unsightly from anger. However, he couldn't put on airs as Tsangzhou's crown prince in the academy. Of course, even if he put on airs, it was hard to say whether they would accept it. After receiving a rebuff from the little stoic, Ronly turned around with a black face and left with Su Yonyang. His resentment towards Duan Yu increased by another stroke. How did this Duan Yu inexplicably have such a good relationship with the Divine Province's Crown Prince and Crown Princess? This made him even more vigilant against this person. As expected, he was a scheming and resourceful fellow. He must think of a way to deal with him. I want to beat him up, the little stoic said expressionlessly as she glared at Ronly's departing figure. When she saw the scheming glint in his eyes as he approached her and Emolien, she recalled how Duan Yu, that pitiful fellow, had been bullied countless times by this so-called big brother of his back in Tsangzhou. This Ronly was truly hilarious. Did he think that he could still be on good terms with the Divine Province's Crown Prince and Crown Princess with his character? Emolien silently twitched her mouth. Duan Yu, this scoundrel, usually pretended to be pitiful, making Jojo really think that this pitiful fellow had suffered a lot in Tsangzhou. According to his understanding of his love rival, this guy was definitely doing well in Tsangzhou and definitely had a good life. Sir Jojo was still ridiculing, look at that Tsangzhou's crown prince and then look at Duan Yu. They really don't look like they have the same father. He's so dejected, not like big brother Duan Yu at all. Just like you and the king of Jianping's heir. You're clearly cousins, but you're completely different. As expected, the dragon has 9 sons. They can dig holes, burrow into the ground, gnaw at the corners, and have everything. Emolien secretly suppressed her belly full of laughter and reached out to hold the little fellow's hand. Actually, Ronly wasn't that bad no matter how you looked at it. Ronly could be considered a talent. Arbor raised his head expressionlessly and saw third young Master Duan rapidly retreating from the arena. His body swayed for a moment before he managed to steady himself. The little stoic's eyes brightened, and she pattered up to third young Master Duan and announced in a crisp voice, "You've lost." As it turned out, while the two of them were speaking with Rongli, third young Master Duan had already exchanged blows with Duanyu, and he quickly retreated in defeat. As soon as Duan Tianya turned around, he saw a stoic face with a hint of schadenfreude on it standing not far away from him. Duanyu also floated down the stage and approached Arbor with a grin. Jojo, I won. Mo Lien rolled her eyes and reached out to block his approaching smile. She ridiculed in her mind, "You're a transcendent stage scoundrel, posturing and concealing your aura to fight a guy who hasn't broken through to the transcendent stage. What's there to celebrate about winning?" Duanyu forcefully flung away Mo Lien's paw and circled around to Sir Jojo's other side with a grin. "Jojo, I'm awesome, right?" Sir Jojo nodded and ruefully thought, the youth I thought was a weak chicken the first time I met him had already grown to this extent. Duan Tianya wasn't angry. He tilted his head and looked at Duanyu, extending his hand openly. "I'm Duan Tianya." "Duanyu." A pair of hands clasped together for a moment before loosening. Chapter 28-36. A faint smile appeared on Duan Tianya's icy face. "Grandfather mentioned you a while ago. Come home and visit when you have time." Duanyu nodded in agreement. Ever since he returned to Tsang province, he indeed hadn't visited his own family. Duan Tianya was the first person he met. This person seemed to be quite nice. Duanyu retracted his gaze and turned to Arbor. "Jojo, did Rongli come to find you guys earlier?" "Emichim," Arbor harumphed. "I knew he wasn't a good person at first glance. I chased him away. He sent people to kill you, but we don't have any evidence for now. We can't kill him openly, so let's find a chance to tie him up and beat him up to vent our anger." "Jojo, great idea." Duanyu immediately exclaimed with adoration in his eyes. "Mo Lien, do you have to be so shameless? Everything Jojo says is a good idea. He simply doesn't have any integrity. That punk has quite a few senior students protecting him. Even if you want to kidnap him, you have to plan thoroughly before kidnapping him." Duanyu glanced at him speechlessly. What right did this guy have to look at him like he was a shameless person? He wasn't without integrity either. The next second, he was coming up with a plan and even came up with a kidnapping plan. Duan Tianya suddenly felt like he couldn't continue listening. "Third Duan, you're little fourth Duan's older brother, right?" Arbor suddenly asked. Duan Tianya's neck stiffened as he nodded. "All right then." Arbor nodded and turned to walk to the other stages. "I'm going to see how Xuanxuan's competition is going." What did he mean? Duan Tianya was a bit perplexed. Why did little crown princess leave after throwing down those 3 words? Mo Lien glanced at Duan Tianya in amusement. Indeed, there really weren't many people in this world who could understand the little fellow's jumpy thoughts and speech patterns. Duanyu chuckled. "Jojo has acknowledged you for the first time. She will probably consider you as a friend in the future." Mo Lien snorted and turned to leave. Duanyu rolled his eyes twice at his departing figure before asking, "Do you want to continue the competition?" Duan Tianya shook his head. "My points should be enough." The main reason he came to compete today was to challenge this extremely outstanding genius of the Duan clan's younger generation. Duanyu came up from the lower star domain, but his aptitude was probably the best among the Duan clan's younger generation. Arbor walked to the front of Qi Xuanxuan's battle stage and saw that the little lass had won another match. She was grinning at him. Huifeng's figure flashed, and he suddenly appeared behind the two. He took a few steps forward and whispered to Arbor, "Crown Princess, news came from the imperial capital. Something happened at Kaidai Veranda." Arbor was startled and turned to look at Huifeng's solemn expression. "What happened?" "Last night, some thugs attacked Kaidai Loft and set it on fire." Mo Lian's eyes chilled when she heard this. "How did the matter go? Were there any casualties?" Arbor asked. "2 customers died that night. However, they weren't burned to death. They were trampled to death when they were pushed out of the door." Huifeng's expression turned increasingly unsightly when he mentioned this. "Caixio was burned, and her injuries are quite serious." "How could that be? Wasn't Caixio in the palace? Why did she run to Kaidai Loft?" "Half of the gatehouse was burned down, but it was rescued in time, so the damage wasn't too great." Chapter 28:37. Arbor and Mo Lian looked at each other and whispered, "I have to go back and take a look." "I'll go back with you." Arbor reached out and squeezed Mo Lian's hand. She pulled him out of the crowd and whispered to him, "Stay here and keep an eye on Mayan." Xian and the rest still had to continue the competition in the next few days. If they both left, who knew if Mayan would take the opportunity to make things difficult for her companions. "Don't worry. I use a teleportation talisman array. It will take at most a day to go back and forth." The little fellow winked at him rather smugly. "I have already advanced to an Earth-rank Great Talisman Master. The Earth-rank teleportation talisman array that I created can teleport up to 50 kilometers away and can teleport up to 20 people. It can teleport up to 12 times in a row." "Lian, aren't I awesome?" Mo Lian looked down at her with a smile. His treasure's eyes were practically shining when she talked about the talisman array that she created. It was obvious that she was very pleased with herself. But it was also true. It was not easy to become an Earth-rank talisman master at her age and create such a powerful teleportation talisman array. She was indeed extraordinary. If the little fellow had a tail behind her, it would definitely be wagging left and right. "My JoJo is really amazing." Mo Lian reached out and pulled her to his side, rubbing her little face with his fingers. Arbor was a little happy. After thinking about it, he also felt that he was quite amazing. The teleportation talisman arrays that she created now could set directions. As long as the general direction was correct, the teleportation distance would not deviate too much. Lady Qiao raised her head and looked at him, her eyes sparkling as she said, "The teleportation talisman array made from this kind of jade talisman can be used up after replenishing its talisman energy. After resting for a day, it can be used again tomorrow." Therefore, she had prepared 3 sets of teleportation talisman arrays. If she could teleport up to 36 times in a row, she would probably reach the outskirts of Sovereign Capital. If she did not have enough teleportation talisman arrays, she could just run to Fish Orchid Planet and draw a few more sets. It was not difficult at all. With the talisman in hand, there was no need to worry about not being able to go and return quickly. Mo Lian was originally a bit gloomy, but when he heard Xiao Qiao's words, he immediately beamed with joy. That's right, under normal circumstances, even with the Crimson Firmament Blue Wave ship, it would still take 5 to 6 days to make a round trip. JoJo's talisman array was really wait a minute. Mo Lian blinked. Suddenly, she grabbed the little fellow's hand and asked in confusion, "JoJo, since the teleportation glyph array is so fast, why didn't we use the glyph array when we first came?" There were only 9 of them in their group, which was more than enough for a few teleportations. At most, he would reach the great forest of the north-facing forest and would not be able to tell the direction. If he traveled a little further, he would be able to save some time and wouldn't have to rush. Jojo-san turned around expressionlessly and faced his husband with the back of his head, showing an attitude that said, "I don't want to talk about it." Mo Lien held back her laughter and lowered her eyes slightly. His Xiao Xiao had most likely forgotten about this. There was no way to continue this topic. Mo Lien coughed softly and stepped forward as if nothing had happened. She reached out to hold the little fellow's hand again. Jojo, then you should be back around this time tomorrow, right? Arbor nodded calmly. If nothing unexpected happens, I should be. Have Hui Feng bring some people back with you. Chapter 28:38. Arbor nodded and looked up at him. It's fine. Those people probably can't do anything big. Burn down Kaidai Pavilion. That was perfect. After so many years, the tables, chairs, and cutlery inside Kaidai Pavilion were all worn out. They could take advantage of this opportunity to renovate everything. In any case, the little crown princess had plenty of money, so she didn't lack the loss of time and money to renovate Kaidai Pavilion. Mo Lien gave a MHM and nodded with a grin. You have to come back early. At the latest, you must come back at noon the day after tomorrow, understand? HM. The little fellow looked over curiously and stared at his beautiful phoenix eyes that were curved into crescents. She scrutinized him. Are you hiding something from me? What could I be hiding? Mo Lien pulled her into his embrace and nuzzled his head against hers. I just miss you. You keep running away from me, and I get flustered when you run far away. Miss Chiao wanted to laugh, but she suppressed her smile with a serious expression. She raised her small hand and stroked his hair. Be good in the academy. Don't always get into a dogfight with Duan Yu. After saying that, without waiting for the stiff-faced Prince Mo to react, she broke free from his embrace with a hearty laugh and called out to Hui Feng, Let's go, Hui Feng. Duan Yu was walking over, and he was nearly blinded by the little lady's resplendent smile. His eyes seemed to be lit up by the sun, moon, and stars, and his rippling peach blossom eyes were brimming with smiles. Where are you going, Jojo? Jojo smiled. When she smiled, it was as if the first snow had scattered and the plum blossoms had bloomed. Her entire person radiated with radiant vitality, truly making people unable to shift their eyes away. I'm going back for a bit. I'll be back tomorrow. The little lady waved her hand, and 24 jade talismans swiftly lined up in a row and circled around her. Get along well with Lien, okay? The little lady exhorted and received a muffled "oh" from Duan Yu. She then pulled Hui Feng and disappeared from the teleportation talisman matrix. This move was truly a bit shocking. Although the little girl did not deliberately show this in front of others, there were quite a few people who saw the teleportation array light up and the little girl disappear. When Mu Xingchen ran over, his eyes involuntarily lit up as he stared at Duan Yu and asked, Teleportation Talisman Matrix. Was Jojo using a teleportation talisman matrix just now? That's right, that's right. When Duan Yu saw Mo Lien walking towards him, he pursed his lips in annoyance. Jojo left in such a hurry. Are you going back alone? Emichim, Mo Lien nodded, and his gaze swept past his brother-in-law. Wasn't this brother-in-law a little too agitated these past few days? He raised his eyes and swept his gaze across the crowd. He only caught a glimpse of the corner of a red robe. It wasn't an illusion. Someone had been staring at them all this while. Huff, huff, huff. Mu Rochuan ran so fast that after turning a corner and hiding under the eaves, she was still gasping for breath. What did she see? Teleportation glyph formation. It was a teleportation talisman matrix. Arbor actually knew how to draw a teleportation talisman matrix. Why? She didn't believe it, she didn't believe it. How could Arbor draw a teleportation talisman matrix that even she didn't know? Could it be that she wasn't the one who drew that teleportation talisman matrix? Then what kind of expert was guiding her behind the scenes to be able to casually gift her a teleportation talisman matrix? This was quite generous. Mu Rochuan kept gasping for breath. Chapter 28:39. She felt that the gloominess in her chest was about to burst out. At this time, a crisp laughter suddenly came from behind her. "Eldest Miss Mu, what's wrong?" Mu Rochuan abruptly turned her head like a thief, and her gaze met Shi Yongqian's. Why are you here?" "Ha, I followed you all the way here." "You were too focused on shock and defeat, right, so you didn't notice me all this time." Shi Yongqian chuckled. She was a blacksmith master, but her cultivation wasn't high. She definitely didn't have a share in the competition for the Sun-Moon Secret Realm spots this time. Today, she was only here to join in the fun and take a look at the top-ranked students in the academy. She wanted to see if there was anyone worthy of befriending. To her surprise, she saw the Little Stoics group. The Little Stoic was accompanied by Prince Mo, whose appearance was described as exquisite and unadorned, and she was truly too conspicuous. It was hard not to see her. She naturally noticed the Little Stoic leaving using the transportation formation just now. Of course, the things she paid attention to were even more than Mu Rochuan. Before this, her gaze had actually always been on young Sir Omega Kotoku. When she saw the way the Omega Kotoku gazed at the Little Stoic, her fingers dug into her palms until they bled. The second young Sir's gaze was truly too focused on the little girl, so focused that it made Shi Yongqian's heart ache. They were already engaged, yet he used that kind of affectionate gaze to look at another girl. This truly made her embarrassed and hateful to the extreme. The hatred in his heart towards the Little Stoic also increased by another level. Shi Yongqian's man, actually stared blankly at another girl's smile. What was there to look at? He couldn't even pull his gaze away. He even turned a deaf ear to her soft calls a dozen times by his ear. This feeling of her fiancé being right next to her but separated by thousands of mountains and rivers made Shi Yongqian feel a trace of despair. At this moment, it was as if there were thousands of ants incessantly gnawing at her heart. It was so unbearable that she wanted to die. Meanwhile, eldest Miss Mu was completely stupefied and frightened by the transportation formation the Little Stoic used, but Shi Yongqian, wasn't. It was just a teleportation glyph array, but it scared Miss Mu to this extent. How ridiculous. No matter how powerful a talisman master was, it was impossible for him to surpass a person with the highest cultivation. In Shi Yongqian's opinion, being a talisman master was not a big deal. If you were to really fight with someone who had reached the God realm, the moment you opened the talisman, the opponent's divine power would have already hit you. You would definitely not be able to win. Moreover, talismans were consumables. How many talismans could a talisman master draw in a day? Even if he saved up for a year, it would only be enough for one battle, right? In Shi Yongqian's opinion, the Little Stoic who used the aura-concealing talisman was merely a little level 3 spiritual cultivator. She couldn't even surpass her cultivation. Wasn't the Little Stoic just a bit more external assistance? With His Highness the Crown Prince by her side, no one dared to bully her. With the title of the Crown Princess hanging on her body, everyone could only respect her and flatter her. When she fought with others, she would only summon her contracted beasts. Her contracted beast, Sand Scorpion, was much stronger than the contracted beasts of other clerics. She only had the ability to rely on external help or intimidate others. Could she really bring out her true strength? Shi Yongqian pursed her lips in disdain and glanced at Mu Rochuan, who seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. Chapter 28:40. Shi Yongqian smiled and said, "I received news that something happened at the Little Crown Princess Kaidai Pavilion last night. She left in such a hurry. She probably went back to deal with this matter." Mu Roshwan's mind was in a bit of a daze. When she heard Shi Yongqian's words, her heart couldn't help but tremble. She returned to the imperial capital? Right. She should also return to the imperial capital. Not for anything else, but her heart was in a mess and she really wanted to confide in her mother. She was truly in a mess. She didn't even know if her heart was entangled by a mental demon. Since last night, her mind had been restless and she couldn't guide spiritual energy into her body to cultivate. If this continued, she would be crippled. No, she couldn't continue like this. Her mother was so intelligent and farsighted. She would definitely find a way to help her. Mu Roshwan also hurriedly turned around. You hate her, right? Shi Yongqian suddenly chuckled behind her. As if a thunderbolt had struck her head on a sunny day, Mu Roshwan's heart was in a complete mess. She turned around and shouted in a flustered and exasperated manner, No. I don't hate her. Why would I hate her? Arbor was just a wild child without parents since young. She had always been stranded in a damned place like the lower star field and cultivated until now. She was only a level 3 spirit master. She only had a stroke of good fortune and received some guidance from an expert. That's why she had such achievements in talismans today. She just had dog's hit luck. Yes, it was dog's hit luck. Arbor's life was generally very tragic. She didn't have a father, mother, or family to care for her. She must have suffered a lot growing up. How could she be mentioned in the same breath as a young miss of an aristocratic family like her? Why would she be jealous of a wild child without parents? Heh, what a joke. Mu Roshwan's eyes shot out a poisonous light. Don't talk nonsense. Shi Yongqian, our friendship isn't deep. We can't open our hearts to each other. Don't try to trick me. I won't tell you anything. I won't. Shi Yongqian smiled. Her smile was very tranquil. I have no ill intentions towards you, young Miss Mu. Why do you have to put up a front in front of me? You just hate her, you hate her to death. Mu Roshwan staggered and leaned against the wall. She shook her head repeatedly. No, I didn't. She's my sister. Why would I hate her? I hate her for doing this, you just hate her. Shi Yongqian said harshly. You hate her for stealing all your glory the moment she came back. You hate her for forcing you and your mother to the edge of the cliff. You hate that her talisman skills have reached the acme of perfection, surpassing you, the eldest Mississippi. You hate her for taking away all of your brother's attention. Isn't that right? Shi Yongqian had observed Miss Mu more than once. She knew Mu Roshwan's mentality better than anyone else. This jealousy was very easy to understand. Miss Mu had grown up under the halo of the genius Miss Mu since she was born. And now, with Arbor's appearance, she was being compared to her again and again. No matter if it was appearance, identity, or innate talent in drawing talismans, this genius young miss had been defeated by Arbor. It would be strange if she wasn't jealous. Mu Roshwan staggered and almost fell to the ground. With your identity, isn't it the easiest way to get close to her? I have a medicine here that can make her disappear completely from the world without a trace. Shi Yongqian reached out and took out a small white porcelain bottle. She smiled at her, revealing her white teeth. Chapter 2841. No. No. Mu Roshwan forcefully pushed her hand away and shouted harshly, Go away. I don't want your medicine. No, I won't harm her. I won't. She's my younger sister. My mother told me before that she hasn't had it easy all these years. I won't listen to you, an outsider, and harm our own family. Why scram? Scram. Mu Roshwan roared somewhat hysterically. I'm not jealous of her. I won't be jealous of her. She was the genius eldest miss in the eyes of the clan head and elders. Not long ago, several elders even praised her as the most outstanding talent of this generation of the Mu clan, and that she was even better than her brother, Mu Xingqian. If she wasn't a girl, she would be more than qualified to be the Mu clan's young master. Why would a genius like her be jealous of Arbor's fatherless wild child? It was simply laughable. Ha! Watching Mu Rochuan's fleeing figure, Shi Yongqian smiled faintly and said softly, Mu Rochuan, if you change your mind, you can come find me at any time to continue our collaboration. Mu Rochuan didn't reply at all and ran away like a madwoman. She returned to her small room and slammed the door shut. Then, she leaned against the door and panted heavily for a while. Only then did she take out 2 sets of transportation talisman matrices from her inner world with trembling hands. Transportation talisman matrices were the clan's most precious treasures. It was extremely difficult for the elders to draw them, so there were only a few sets of transportation talisman matrices in existence. Hers was a black-level transportation talisman matrix. It could transport a distance of about 10 kilometers at a time. She usually treasured it and couldn't bear to use it easily. But now, she couldn't care less. She had to go back and had to talk to her mother in a flash. Mu Rochuan's figure disappeared from the room. Arbor teleported more than 30 times with Hui Feng and Li Ye's group. By noon, they had already arrived at the outskirts of the imperial capital. Hui Feng and the others couldn't help but admire their young crown prince consort to no end. Especially Hui Feng, whose grin stretched to his ears. The little crown princess casually gave him a set of teleportation talisman arrays. She said that if he did not teleport more than 10 times a day, the talisman power inside would last him about a year. He was overjoyed. In the future, when he brought his brothers out to do things, it would save him a lot of trouble. He could even launch a surprise attack at any time. Just thinking about it made him happy. Everyone quickly changed into the spirit stallions provided by the little crown princess and rode towards the imperial capital. They only thought that the little crown princess had kept a lot of spirit stallions in the storage talisman in case of emergency. They did not know that Arbor had raised a lot of stallions in Paradise Planet. The journey back to the capital was as fast as lightning. It was only 30 miles away, and with the spirit stallion speed, it would take about half an hour to reach. Arbor never mistreated his subordinates. After entering Sovereign Capital, he didn't rush to Kaidai Loft to investigate. It just so happened that it was lunchtime, so he led the group to a random restaurant. The 10 or so people asked for a private room and sat around a large table to eat. When everyone was almost done eating, they heard someone making a ruckus downstairs. Quickly go take a look. Kaidai Loft's entrance is surrounded by people. So many people are here to demand an explanation. Wow, there's a show to watch. Hey, dear customers, settle the bill before you leave. The innkeeper signaled with his eyes and hurriedly had a few workers block the people who were rushing to leave. Chapter 2842. Those people sulkily pursed their lips and muttered, "It's not like we'll steal your food money." They then took out money from their pockets and tossed it on the table before running off with the crowd. Arbor naturally heard the crowd's shouts downstairs. She knitted her brows and exchanged glances with Hui Feng and the others. "Crown Princess, how about this subordinate go over and take a look first?" Arbor shook her head. "Let's go over together." After saying this, she called for the waiter and paid the bill before leading Hui Feng and Li Ye's group toward Kaidai Veranda's entrance with the crowd. Li Yi stood next to the young crown princess the entire time. When people tried to squeeze forward, she expressionlessly stretched out her arm and forcefully pushed them aside. 2 of the people she pushed were unscrupulous. They cursed, but Li Ye's hands were as fast as lightning as she chopped at their necks without another word. Everyone was extremely speechless. Those who originally wanted to squeeze forward didn't dare to do so when they saw Li Ye's valiant fighting strength and hastily retreated a few steps. "Be gentler," the young crown prince consort said with a serious expression. "Yes." Li Yi nodded in acknowledgement. Huifeng's mouth involuntarily twitched, and he silently led his group to follow behind the crown princess. When everyone arrived at Kaidai Veranda's entrance, they saw that it had already been completely surrounded by a sea of people. There was simply no place to put one's feet. 2 bamboo stretchers were placed in front of Kaidai Veranda's entrance, and the corpses on them had white cloth covering their faces. More than a dozen men and women knelt there and wailed, their cries uneven. Judging from their appearance and attire, they seemed to be the family members of a small family in the city, the kind that couldn't starve but didn't have much money on hand either. Arbor walked up, and Li Yi used her arm to push aside the people around her, protecting her as she walked forward. Their group moved like the wind, and they were all dressed in black. They looked very young, but their cultivations didn't seem to be weak. The little girl in the middle had exquisite features, but her eyes remained icy, cold, and her fiery red clothes were very eye-catching. Although the group did not speak much, everyone was very perceptive and moved to the sides. As long as some people walked in front of others, they would make others feel a strong pressure. This was the existence of aura. Now, everyone felt this kind of pressure from this young girl. As long as they weren't stupid, they were very perceptive and moved to the side. In the imperial capital, a single brick could kill 3 to 5 high-ranking officials and nobles. Everyone had really trained their eyesight to know who they could afford to offend and who they couldn't. Who dares to cause trouble in front of Kaidai Pavilion? Shopkeeper who walked out and frowned as he looked at the sobbing people kneeling at the entrance of the Kaidai Pavilion. These people should be the family members of the 2 guests who died in the accident yesterday. However, he had sent someone to contact the families of the 2 guests early in the morning and sincerely discussed the issue of compensation with them. Why did they come here to cause a ruckus? Master! You left in such a hurry and left such a big family behind. How are we supposed to live? An old woman wailed as she threw herself to the ground. She raised her face slightly, and her tears filled the deep gullies on her face. Shopkeeper who? The little crown princess walked towards him and stood in front of them. Shopkeeper who was surprised and delighted. His furrowed brows relaxed slightly, and he hurriedly bowed in greeting. Greetings, Crown Princess. Chapter 2843. Crown Princess. Several workers from Kaidai Veranda also hastily stepped forward to greet her. Only then did the surrounding crowd realize what was going on and hastily knelt down to pay their respects, not daring to act rashly. Even those who couldn't immediately recognize the little crown princess had heard of the little crown princess's terrifying method of angrily rebuking the temple saintess. They acknowledged that they weren't as honorable as the temple saintess. The crown princess even dared to beat up the saintess, so how could they dare to be impudent in front of the crown princess? Instantly, the surrounding clamor gradually quieted down. Aside from the 2 groups of family members who were still weeping incessantly, the onlookers all quieted down. Due to the lack of noise in the surroundings, the 2 groups of family members' wails also gradually quieted down. As the old woman in the lead cried, she sneaked glances at the expressionless little crown princess. Her appearance was rather comical due to her guilty conscience. Arbor didn't look at them as his gaze landed on shopkeeper who unfortunately died yesterday. It was Landlord Li and Boss Zhang. Shopkeeper who stepped forward and respectfully reported, when the commotion broke out, someone took advantage of the chaos and set a fire at the entrance. Arbor looked up at the half-ruined Kaidai veranda and nodded slightly. How did you negotiate with them? In response to the crown princess, after this happened, I immediately sent people to these 2 families and negotiated a compensation of 100,000 spirit coins for each family. At the time, they readily agreed. He didn't expect that the two families would change their minds in just one morning. The one who howled the loudest was Boss Zhang's mother, old Madame Zhang. Her eyes darted around before she slapped her thigh and started crying. They want to buy my son's life with just 100,000 spirit coins. This Kaidai veranda is truly undisciplined and out of control with the crown princess backing them up. Shopkeeper whose face flushed red. You. This shrew clearly didn't say this when she came to discuss this matter with them this morning. Go invite Lord Chao here, Arbor said aloofly to Hui Feng, who was behind him. Yes. Hui Feng immediately accepted the order and left. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, wondering if this Lord Chao was the governor, Chao Butu. Take the Eastern Palace's token and head to the Ministry of Justice to invite Assistant Minister Zhou over. Also, bring those ruffians from yesterday over to me while you're at it. The little stoic then turned around to say to Li Yi. Yes. Remember not to scare people, the little stoic instructed. Li Yi nodded. Crown Princess, Li Yi understands. That little face was serious and unsmiling. She turned around and jumped onto the roof with a whoosh, disappearing after a few jumps. The capital governor's mansion was actually quite close to Changle Street. Even with Lord Chao's help, it only took the time it took for an incense stick to burn. During this time, Arbor had people bring out a few armchairs and help the elders sit down. At first, old Madame Zhang was unwilling. The little crown princess said coldly, "Old madam, you're already so old. It's not appropriate for you to sit on the cold ground and cry. Our Kaidai veranda is sincere in resolving this matter, so please cooperate with us. Crying, throwing a tantrum and threatening to hang yourself won't solve any problems. I hope you understand that you're already so old. Even if you don't want face yourself, your descendants will still want face in the future when they live in the capital." Old Madame Zhang's complexion alternated between green and white when she heard this series of sarcastic words. Chapter 2844. 534 Slap you to death. When Chao Jiedo arrived, he saw a group of people crowding around Kaidai Pavilion's entrance. Squeezing in, he saw the crown princess sitting there expressionlessly. Behind her were several black-clothed youths standing ramrods straight behind the crown princess, each of them as upright as a pine tree. Chao Jiedo hurriedly went forward to greet the crown princess. After that, the little crown princess gave him a friendly nod and pointed to the armchair at the side for him to sit down. Lord Chao knew that today's situation was getting more and more serious. They were probably waiting for someone to arrive. At this time, that Zhang family's old lady didn't dare to cry loudly anymore. Supported by her children, she sat on the armchair as if she was sitting on pins and needles. Her buttocks kept shifting here and there, secretly checking on the crown princess' expression from time to time. Ever since the little crown princess gave her a lukewarm scolding, she hadn't said a word. Although she was very young, the aura she exuded while sitting there didn't allow anyone to ignore her. After a short while, the Ministry of Justice's assistant minister, Zhou Qing, led 7 to 8 people of all ages to Kaidai Pavilion's entrance. This humble official, Zhou Qing, greets the crown princess. Official Zhou has worked hard. The little crown princess nodded expressionlessly, her gaze falling on the men and women strung together with torture instruments behind him. These are the people who attacked Kaidai Pavilion last night. Old Lady Zhang immediately jumped up from her armchair and raised her hand to slap a 7 to 8-year-old child's face. So it was you who committed the sin of trampling my son to death. Stop! Arbor shouted angrily. Li Yi immediately stepped forward and blocked the old lady's arm. The crown princess told you to stop. Didn't you hear? Old Lady Zhang almost fell to the ground from her shove, but was supported by her 2 sons behind her. Her wrinkled old face immediately revealed a resentful expression as she wailed, "I-oh. Kai-Dai Pavilion's boss is bullying people. Disrespectful elders, slap her. The little crown princess berated. Without another word, Li Yi raised her hand and slapped the old lady's face. Old Madame Zhang was stunned by this crisp paw sound. Everyone opened their mouths in surprise. Old Madame Zhang's two sons were originally supporting their mother. Seeing that Li Yi was so ruthless, they wanted to go up and block her. Who knew that Li Ye's movements were so fast that a slap landed on old Madame Zhang's face? The heavy voice caused the hearts of the two to tremble slightly. The timid younger son immediately regretted following his mother to the entrance of Kai-Dai brothel to cause trouble. No matter what, Kai-Dai restaurant was the property of the crown princess. Now, the person they were going against was the high and mighty crown princess. If things went wrong, they might really end up worse off. Madame Li was originally a timid person. This time, she was willing to come with old Madame Zhang. To a large extent, she was encouraged by old Madame Zhang. Now that she saw old Madame Zhang suffer in the hands of the little crown princess, she didn't dare to speak. Old Madam, according to the law, if you behave in such a manner in front of the crown princess, you will be caned 10 times as a warning to others. Li Yi coldly said. The crown princess has been patient with you on account of your age. I'll have to trouble you to be tactful. Old Madame Zhang was beaten until she couldn't make a sound. Her eyes were filled with indignation as she muttered a few words. When she met the little crown princess' icy eyes, she was beaten until she couldn't speak. Chapter 28:45. Without the old madam's noisy voice, the scene quiets down again. Arbor indifferently turns his head to look at the 7 to 8 ragged people and asks coldly, "Shopkeeper who, what was the situation yesterday?" The 7 to 8 people in front of him, 2 old and 1 young, 3 young men and 2 middle-aged women, did not look like a mob that would commit murder and arson. Replying to the crown princess. Shopkeeper who recalls for a moment and says clearly, "Yesterday, the Fuxing Lu on the next street was giving out black beans. That's why a lot of people went to the Fuxing Lu to watch the show. Other than a few old customers, there really aren't many people who came to our Kai-Dai veranda." Shopkeeper who thinks for a moment, then points at old Madame Zhang and says, "That boss Zhang is the second boss of the Fuxing Lu, that Fuxing Lu is the property of the 3 Zhang brothers. These 3 Zhang brothers are usually stingy, but who knows what's wrong with them yesterday that they actually thought of giving out free black beans to the beggars. The funniest thing is, it said that this family made such a big fuss, but in the end, they only gave out a dozen liters of black beans. The beggars queued up for a long time, but in the end only 40 to 50 people received the black beans. Recently, there have been quite a lot of refugees from Xiang City." Shopkeeper Hoot says, "When Fuxing Lu gave out the black beans, we thought that they would be able to help the victims, but who knew that this matter was not handled properly." The 2 Zhang brothers who were ridiculed by Shopkeeper who both have a black face, looking like they are angry but do not dare to say anything. Do you think that they are willing to fork out money to help the victims? Isn't it because they want to gain a good reputation and at the same time, attract some business for their own store? It's so hard to do business these days. How can they not be envious when they see Kai-Dai veranda's business flourishing across the street? Arbor glances at them, then turns to look at Shopkeeper who, and then. The 3 brothers of the Zhang family fished for fame and compliments. They did a half-assed job and attracted a lot of beggars. In the end, only a portion of them received food. The rest of the beggars naturally complained. These people were wandering around the next street begging. They even attracted the attention of the local authorities. The capital governor nodded and jumped up to testify, "That's right. I received news that a large number of refugees were wandering around Changle Street, so I sent Wu Xiaoyin to drive them away." To put it bluntly, Changle Street was the main traffic artery. This street was filled with nobles and nobles. How could they allow so many beggars to occupy it? This was related to the capital's political achievements. If the entire capital were to be flooded with refugees, it wouldn't look good. Arbor nodded and asked shopkeeper what did you do after that? These friends are beggars who left the large group and wandered into the vicinity of our Kaidai pavilion. I saw that they were having a hard time making a living, so I decided to be kind. Shopkeeper stole a glance at the young crown princess. He was afraid that the crown princess would think that he was a busybody, so he braced himself and said, So I gave them some leftovers from the shop. This grandpa is a good person. At this moment, the boy among the mob couldn't help but shout, he's a good person. An old woman beside the boy tried to push her grandson away, using her eyes to signal him to stop talking. Arbor glanced at them, then turned to shopkeeper and said, Continue. Shopkeeper hurriedly continued. Boss Zhang and his friend, Landlord Li, came to drink and sat at the entrance. Chapter 2846. Not long after, Miss Kai Xiao hurriedly rushed over with a letter in her hand. Shopkeeper whose tone became hurried, Crown Princess, this lowly one really doesn't know how this matter turned out like that. It was as if it all exploded in an instant. There. It was them, it was those two. Shopkeeper pointed at the two strong young men and shouted. Those two suddenly broke into Kaidai Pavilion and shouted loudly. Then, they smashed everything and set fire. Actually, there weren't many people in the store at that time. Most of the people had escaped when those two people were shouting. Boss Zhang and Landlord Li were clearly sitting at the door. How could they not escape? Shopkeeper was puzzled. It was just that it was very chaotic at that time. While he was looking for people to deal with those two boorish men, he was also evacuating the customers. He really didn't notice Boss Zhang and Landlord Li. Who would have thought that when he turned around, he would see the two of them lying in the fire at the door. At that time, the fire had already burned the two of them. They were lying at the door, unaware of what was going on. There were also a few people standing beside them who didn't know what to do. A shopkeeper pointed at the boy, the old man, the two women, and the man. We didn't trample them to death, we didn't trample them to death. The old woman, the boy, and the woman hurriedly cried out. One of the strong young men among them hurriedly knelt down and cowed out, Crown Princess is wise. These two are my parents. This is my nephew, my widowed sister-in-law, and my eldest sister. At that time, we were indebted to the old shopkeeper's kindness and rewarded our family with food. How could we do something like repay kindness with enmity and implicate the shopkeeper? That's right, that's right. The old woman also cried. We had been sitting behind the stone railing at Kaidai Pavilion. When the fire started, we were eating. When I saw that the fire was so big, I quickly asked my son to go and help. When the family ran to Kaidai Pavilion's door, that Boss Zhang was just about to run out. We hurriedly reached out to grab him. Who knew that he would suddenly fall down in front of us? Shopkeeper nodded repeatedly. That's right, Boss Zhang and Landlord Li were originally sitting at the door. If they wanted to run, they could actually run very fast. But I don't know why, the rumor of someone being trampled to death was also spread last night. Shopkeeper thought for a while and said, I don't know who spread this rumor. Everyone is saying that the Kaidai Pavilion was attacked by a mob and someone was trampled to death. Arbor roughly understood the situation and pointed at the two people covered by the white cloth. Open it. When old Madame Zhang heard this, she immediately disagreed. What do you want? Didn't you bring her here to let people see her? Arbor stabbed her coldly. If you didn't want people to see her, why did you bring her here? We have to get to the bottom of this before we can talk about compensation. Whether or not it's related to the Kaidai veranda is still unknown. Just by looking at the family's untruthful appearance, Arbor felt that the cause of their deaths was suspicious. Old Madame Zhang was choked by the little stoic's words. Her heart was stifled with displeasure, and her face turned the color of a pig. Huifeng didn't care whether old Madame Zhang was happy or not. He directly walked up and pulled the white cloth from both sides, revealing two faces that were 60% to 70% charred. Wah! The onlookers nearly vomited from disgust. The group of people continuously retreated a few steps. Wait for me, I'll say it's over. Chapter 28:47. This burning was too disgusting. They fell face down in the fire. Arbor walked forward expressionlessly. He first squatted beside Boss Zhang to take a look, then walked to Squire Li's side. That's right. Shopkeeper who nodded. They weren't burned to death, nor trampled to death. Arbor said coldly, they were poisoned to death. Impossible. Madame Zhang shrieked. They were trampled to death. They were trampled to death. It's your Kaidai brothel's poor management that caused the mob to attack and implicate the guests. Whether it's true or not, wouldn't it be clear if we invite a coroner here? Arbor said coldly, why didn't you let the authorities investigate your son's death? Why did you silently carry him back? Can you tell us about it? Madame Zhang's expression changed slightly. The Zhang brothers' expressions also became unnatural. Probably only your Zhang family knows the truth of the matter. As they spoke, two deft coroner had already been invited over. They went forward to examine the two corpses, then stood up and cupped their hands. The surface of the corpses was severely burned. Ordinary flames wouldn't be able to burn them to this extent in a few minutes, so this subordinate speculates that this should be a 6th-level spiritual fire or above. Assistant Minister Zhou of the Ministry of Justice slapped the stool. In other words, a cultivator with profound cultivation secretly added fuel to the fire when the two boorish men were setting it on fire. There was an uproar in the surroundings. They only felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. Who would do this to Kaidai brothel? Who would send people to cause trouble and secretly add fuel to the fire to deal a heavy blow to them? The corpses didn't show any signs of being trampled. Their faces were burned beyond recognition by the 6th-level spiritual fire. As for the true cause of death, this subordinate's lack of talent and knowledge actually couldn't discern it. The coroner's face was somewhat ashamed as he spoke. The poison they were poisoned with is rather special. It's normal that you couldn't discern it. The young crown princess said faintly. She glanced at Madame Zhang, whose expression was unsightly. Take back what you said before. What? Old Madame Zhang was very nervous. You said that Kaidai brothel's poor management caused the mob to attack and implicate the customers, Arbor said coldly. I want you to tell everyone that there is no such thing. My son is dead now, it's a fact. Old Madame Zhang tried to argue, even if he wasn't killed by the mob, they are not mobs. Arbor interrupted her coldly. Apologize immediately. Old Madame Zhang shrunk her neck, her old face somewhat embarrassed. I just made a slip of the tongue. Impudent. Huifeng shouted angrily. Old madam, you've repeatedly flaunted your seniority and contradicted the crown princess. I'm going to charge you with the crime of disrespect. When old Madame Zhang's two sons heard this, they immediately panicked. They were more cultured than the old lady and knew that the law clearly stated that the crime of great disrespect could implicate the entire family. If it was not handled well, it could even implicate the entire family. The two of them hastily knelt down and begged for forgiveness. Crown Princess, please forgive us. Old mother is old, and her mind is muddled. Please, Crown Princess, don't fuss over this with her. Arbor's small face was cold as she took out a jade talisman from her pocket. Her chilly voice floated next to their ears. Presumably, you won't tell the truth, so I have no choice but to ask your second boss to come over and clarify things. Chapter 28:48. What? Everyone revealed an expression of disbelief. The little crown princess held a jade slip in her hand. What was the meaning of this? A light flashed on the jade slip, and a ray of light burrowed into Boss Zhang's charred body. In less than a second, everyone saw a faint, fluttering shadow float up from Boss Zhang's charred body. It was enveloped by a light barrier, and it looked around in confusion. Mommy! It really is a soul. This isn't a ghost spirit, right? Everyone was shocked and hurriedly retreated. How is that possible? Ghost spirits are born from the resentment of heaven and earth. They're formed from the accumulated resentment of a person's soul that didn't disperse after death. Right. I heard that they carry the power of evil Yin. This Boss Zhang's soul clearly doesn't have any power. It should be an ordinary soul. Everyone felt more at ease after hearing this explanation, but they still couldn't help but move closer to the center of the crowd. The little crown princess was truly godly. She could summon Boss Zhang's ghost with a jade slip. This move was truly too masterful. Not only were the onlookers frightened, but the Zhang family was also quite frightened. Old Madame Zhang nearly fainted from fright, and she pulled her two sons back several steps. She looked at the indistinct shadow in shock and cried out in a trembling voice, "My son, is that you?" The shadow clearly didn't dare to look at anyone and only stared at Sir Jojo standing in front of him. His face was ghastly pale, and he knelt down when he saw Sir Jojo. He repeatedly kowtowed and cried, "Fairy, fairy, spare my life. Fairy, fairy, spare my life." He was currently in a very weak soul state, so the pressure she gave him was very strong. He felt that if this cold-faced little fairy gave him a strand of pressure, his soul would scatter and completely disappear from this world. Sir Jojo expressionlessly said to Weifeng, "Ask him why he went to the Kai-Dai brothel last night. Make him tell you everything." Weifeng immediately nodded and inwardly walked forward while stifling his laughter. He knew that the little crown princess naturally couldn't see any ghosts. Could it be that she couldn't even see the soul remembrance she attracted? But this time, Weifeng really guessed wrong. Mr. Jojo could not see the ghost that was surrounded by foul air, but she could still see the faint soul. However, after talking so much earlier, she was too lazy to talk to a soul. Boss Zhang's soul confessed everything with just a few words from Weifeng. As it turned out, this brat had planned this all along. He was envious and jealous of Kai Dai Restaurant's good business. The reason why he went to Kai Dai Restaurant for dinner last night was to cause trouble for Kai Dai Restaurant. He had a bag of medicinal powder in his pocket and invited Steward Li. He wanted to drug Steward Li and then say that the food in Kai Dai Restaurant was not clean. He wanted to frame Kai Dai Restaurant. Xiao Mu understood now. No wonder the Zhang family's expressions were so uncomfortable when she mentioned poisoning just now. It turned out that the trick of a thief shouting, "Stop thief," had been exposed. No, that's impossible. That's not poison. Old Madame Zhang hastily shouted, "Don't accuse me wrongly. My son didn't bring poison over at all." Arbor waved her hand and dismissed Boss Zhang's white shadow. The old madam panicked. Where did you take my son?" "Ah. You didn't make his soul scatter, right?" Arbor glanced at her coldly. "He's not worth dirtying my hands for." Chapter 28:49. Assistant Minister Zhou stood up at the right time. He pointed at the boy's family and waved his hand. "Release them. As for the members of the Zhang family, they'll be locked up in the prison of the Ministry of Justice for the time being. We'll deal with them after the case is cleared." Immediately, servants came forward and unlocked the shackles on the old woman and the others. The boy's family immediately shed tears of gratitude. The old woman thanked them profusely, and the whole family stood up, their faces filled with joy. As for the Zhang clan, they were all stunned. Assistant Minister Zhou actually said that he wanted to put all of them in jail and deal with them later. What was the meaning of this? They didn't do anything at all. Why did they have to be imprisoned? Old Madame Zhang immediately sat down on the ground, slapping her thighs as she wailed, "You bunch of bastards, why do you have to wrongly accuse our Zhang family? Put all of us in jail. What did we do?" The little stoic's gaze landed on elderly Madame Zhang, and she said coolly, "You can howl a bit louder." Old Madame Zhang's voice choked, and then her face changed. She cried and shouted, "I really can't live anymore. I'm already so old, but I still have to go through the pain of being imprisoned. I'm suffering, I'm suffering." When the two sons of the Zhang family heard this, they also surrounded the old lady and cried bitterly. Men and women gathered in a circle, crying so loudly that half of the street was alarmed. Arbor stared coldly at the group of clowns and remained unmoved. Oh, and old Madame Zhang saw that something was wrong. She quickly knelt on the ground and begged Arbor, "Crown Princess, please forgive me. Crown Princess, please forgive me. I was blinded by lard and blinded by money. That's why I allowed my second son to do such a disgraceful thing. Now, my second son has already received the punishment he deserved. He is already dead. This matter should end here. I hope that the Crown Princess will be magnanimous and forgive our Zhang family's mistakes." She really regretted it now. If she had known that things would turn out like this and that she wouldn't be able to get any benefits, she wouldn't have made a fuss in the first place. Wouldn't it be better for her to get 100,000 spirit coins as compensation and live happily? The little stoic gazed icily at the elderly lady, her voice frigid. "Tell me, who came to your house today and who made you come to Kai-Dai brothel to cause trouble?" Even at this point, the old lady still dared to set a trap for her with her words. It was as if she wasn't magnanimous enough for not letting the Zhang family off today. She was being too calculative, wasn't she? Old Madame Zhang cried out tearfully, "No one has come to our Zhang family." The little stoic harumphed coldly and turned to say to Assistant Minister Zhou, "This old shrew is full of lies. Not a single word is true. I feel that locking her up for a year and a half won't make her realize her mistake." Assistant Minister Zhou understood the meaning of the song and immediately understood. He nodded in agreement and said, "The Zhang family poisoned and set fires. Their crimes are too numerous to be recorded. This humble official also feels that the Zhang family absolutely cannot be dealt with lightly. This matter is of great importance and must be reported to His Majesty." When old Madame Zhang heard that this matter was going to be reported to His Majesty, how could it be settled peacefully? She couldn't help but tremble in fright, and her eyes were about to pop out. She hastily kowtowed and admitted her mistake. "No, don't." Chapter 2850. This incident was originally caused by my second son, and now he wasn't elderly lady too naive to want to push all the blame onto a dead person. The little stoic coldly interrupted her. "So what if he's dead? Just because he's dead doesn't mean that this incident didn't happen. If it weren't for this crown princess rushing back to deal with it in time, then Kai-Dai Pavilion's reputation would have been utterly destroyed. Not only that, if she didn't deal with this matter properly, the Eastern Palace's reputation would also be tarnished." Arbor felt that there was definitely a mastermind behind this incident. Moreover, 2.5 of that elderly woman's words were untruthful, so how could she easily believe them? She had to make this shrew reveal who the mastermind behind this incident was. Elderly lady felt that the young crown princess's expression was truly too icy, heartless, and arrogant, but she couldn't do anything about it. Currently, the crown princess had the Zhang family's weakness in her hands. If the crown princess didn't want to be kind, an elderly lady from a small wealthy family like her definitely wouldn't be able to contend against her. Elderly Lady Zhang steeled her heart and secretly peeked at her two sons next to her. However, there was a bit of terror on eldest Zhang's face. Eldest Zhang shook his head at his old mother. Although this movement was very slight, it was clearly seen by the young crown princess. The young crown prince consort swept a cold glance at the eldest son of the Zhang family before turning her gaze back to the Zhang family's old matriarch. If you're willing to reveal the mastermind's identity and honestly explain this matter to me, perhaps your entire family can still survive. Otherwise, I believe you won't want to experience this crown princess's methods. These words were very serious, and elderly Lady Zhang was completely stupefied. She didn't expect that just framing Kaidai Pavilion would escalate to this extent and implicate the entire family's lives. As expected, this little malignant star with vicious methods wasn't to be trifled with. Eldest Zhang gritted his teeth and hastily defended himself. Crown Princess, this matter is indeed my second brother's fault. He brought the bag of medicinal powder to Kai Dai restaurant to eat and used this opportunity to tarnish Kai Dai restaurant's reputation. This will definitely affect the reputation of the Crown Princess and the Crown Prince. But my second brother is already dead. What he meant was that Boss Zhang had already shot himself in the foot. Crown Prince Consort, how could you still cling on to this matter and not let it go? Wasn't this a little too unforgiving? The noodle vendor sneered, your whole family is struggling with this problem. I'll tell you one more time. If I, the Crown Princess, had not handled this matter in time, I'm sure you all know what kind of impact this matter would have on the Eastern Palace. That doesn't mean that everything will be over once he's dead. The young Crown Princess stared at the Zhang family with a cold gaze. He was dead, but the matter wasn't over yet. Arbor wanted everyone to know that anyone who messed with her would have to pay the price. The Kaidai Pavilion is a small matter, but the Crown Prince's reputation is important. Lord Zhou, tell them what the punishment for slandering the Crown Princess, tarnishing the Eastern Palace's reputation, and attempting to disrespect the Crown Prince should be. Assistant Minister Zhou hurriedly stepped forward with a serious expression on his old-fashioned face. Replying to the Crown Princess, those who tarnished the Eastern Palace's reputation and attempted to defame the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess should be executed according to the law. Those who committed serious crimes can be sentenced to 9 generations of their family. Elderly Lady Zhang's face paled as she collapsed to the ground. Eldest Zhang was so frightened that he staggered. Chapter 28:51. When they heard that they were going to be imprisoned and might even be beheaded, they were scared out of their wits. Boss Zhang was a bit dumbfounded as he hastily knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. He kept shouting, Crown Princess, please be magnanimous and forgive us this time. It's this one's family that is short-sighted and unwilling to accept the fact that Kaidai Veranda's business is booming. That's why we thought of such an absurd method to take advantage of Kaidai Veranda. We didn't want to offend Your Highness the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. Boss Zhang said in fear and trepidation. Shopkeeper Wu's eyes burned and his veins throbbed as he listened on the side. Because Kaidai Veranda's business was booming, you coveted it and acted to destroy it. You wanted to use this as a pretext to slander them. The main reason was that Kaidai Veranda's business was too good. Ever since Arbor had taken out the holy rice and fruits and vegetables filled with spirit energy, Kaidai Veranda's business had risen steadily. The prices of Kaidai Veranda's dishes were already extremely high to begin with, and the prices of the new holy rice and spirit vegetables had reached a hair-raising level. This instantly attracted the attention of the surrounding restaurants. Actually, it wasn't just Boss Zhang's family that had sent people to Kaidai Veranda to inquire about the situation. In reality, There were many restaurants in the surrounding area that had sent their waiters to Kaidai Veranda to secretly investigate. But the results of their investigations were all consistent. Kaidai Veranda's new dishes, whether it was the holy rice or the special spirit vegetables, were all limited in supply. There were even a few times when customers almost fought over a plate of holy rice. This kind of matter was very strange. If Kaidai Veranda's business had been booming in the past, then it had been booming, but it hadn't been this popular. But the waiters that the bosses had sent out hadn't been able to find any clues. In the end, one of the insiders had pitted them and told them. It turned out that a cultivator of the 7th level of the spirit realm had eaten an extremely expensive meal of holy rice at the Kaidai Pavilion not long ago. He'd advanced in level that night and had been unusually excited. He'd spread the news to his friends and family. Therefore, this matter had become more and more miraculous through word of mouth. Now, everyone knew that Kaidai Veranda's holy rice was very helpful to cultivation. Because that practitioner had been stuck at the 7th level of the spirit realm for who knows how many years, he had thought that he would never be able to break through this realm in his lifetime. However, he had unexpectedly advanced just like that. This caused him to be wild with joy, and it once again broadened his horizons. He realized that there was no end to cultivation in this world. You don't know what will happen in the next second. This made his stagnant life suddenly rise and fall. This person felt that perhaps his cultivation base could really be improved, so he planned to buy more holy rice from shopkeeper who at a sky-high price. However, shopkeeper who spread out his hands, indicating that he couldn't buy it even if he had the money. The holy rice that Arbor had given him was only enough to feed 30 people. After these days of consumption, it had long been used up. Therefore, the last few bowls of holy rice were sold at sky-high prices. A bowl of holy rice that cost 30,000 was sold for 180,000. After the news spread to the various restaurant owners, how could they still sit still? All of them jumped to their feet. What kind of sky-high price was this? How could it be sold for 180,000? Their small restaurants didn't even make 180,000 in a year. How could this be? This was a special product. This was simply robbery. Chapter 2852. The news spread like wildfire. Everyone was saying that Kaidai Veranda's holy rice paired with spirit vegetables could increase one's cultivation level and aid in making breakthroughs. As a result, the entire sovereign capital was in an uproar. Many patriarchs of aristocratic families were racking their brains to buy this holy rice. Unfortunately, even shopkeeper who didn't have any stock of this holy rice on hand. Not only that, several family clans had secretly sent people to Kaidai Veranda to gather information. They wanted to uncover the secret of the holy rice. But to their disappointment, they found nothing. Kaidai Veranda's daily supply of fruits and rice was basically depleted. Even if there was some residue left, they could not find anything amiss after secretly investigating it. Everyone returned empty-handed, but they were even more curious about the holy rice, spirit vegetables, and fruits. Family Patriarch Long, who had been stuck in his cultivation realm for several years, was extremely curious about the limited offerings of Kaidai Veranda. However, there was nothing he could do about it. He had repeatedly tried to purchase the holy rice, but was told that it was out of stock. The repeated requests only made his heart itch even more. Kaidai Veranda's business was even more prosperous than before. Arbor lowered her head to glance at the Zhang family. She pursed her lips and asked coldly, "Who taught you to move a corpse here and cry?" Granny Zhang kowtowed. This time, she was not faking her tears. She was truly regretting her actions. "Crown Princess, it's my fault. I was blinded by greed and wanted to scam Kaidai Veranda. I'll tell you everything." Someone did come to our Zhang family and wanted us to move Er's corpse to Kaidai veranda's entrance to continue causing a ruckus. That person was wearing a Fuwa mask and sounded like a middle-aged man. However, from my decades of experience, that person was definitely a woman disguised as a man. Arbor coldly glanced at Granny Zhang. Old Madam wailed as she wailed, Crown Prince Consort, this old woman has told you everything she knows without reserve. I implore you to let us off this once. Arbor did not say a word. Instead, Assistant Minister Zhou commanded more than a dozen strong guards to step forward and arrest the Zhang family. They placed the shackles that were originally placed on the boy's family onto them. Arbor did not say a word until the Zhang family was dragged away by Assistant Minister Zhou. It was only after the Zhang family's wailing and fussing faded away that Qiao Mu coldly glanced at the crowd and stated dryly, this time, Kaidai Pavilion suffered a fire, so it needs half a month to repair. Kaidai Pavilion will reopen in half a month, and on that day, it will provide at least 3 new specially supplied items. The quantity is limited, the highest bidder wins. After dropping the news, Arbor didn't wait for the crowd's reaction before leading his men into Kaidai Pavilion. Everyone was stopped outside by shopkeeper Hu and the others. When everyone heard that Kaidai Pavilion was going to get more than 3 types of special supplies in half a month, they were excited and emotional. There were even more people who had come to inquire about the news. One after another, they ran out from the crowd and returned to their respective clans to report the news to their respective clan leaders. In a room in the backyard of Kaidai Pavilion, Arbor sat in front of Kai Xiu's bed. After taking her pulse, he didn't speak for a long time. He kept silent, and his face was not good. Hui Feng cautiously asked, Crown Princess, is Kai Xiu's injury very serious? Arbor shook his head. She can be treated. Although Kai Xiu's burns were serious, she guaranteed that she would be able to heal her to her original state. However, when I'm done, I'll end it. Chapter 2853. Kai Xiu's injuries were all on her face, and the burns were very serious. But since the young crown princess said it could be cured, then it definitely could be cured. Hui Feng had this kind of blind confidence in his young crown princess. Kai Chi, who had been taking care of Kai Xiu, also sighed in relief when she heard this. She quickly got up and knelt down in front of the young crown princess. Many thanks, crown princess. Many thanks, crown princess. Get up, Arbor expressionlessly said from her seat. Kai Chi got up and nervously twisted the handkerchief in her hand. Your, crown princess, when Kai Xiu received this letter that day, she left the Eastern Palace and came to Kaidai Veranda. She said that she had something important to inform shopkeeper Hu. When Arbor took the letter, she repeatedly touched the paper. She abruptly grabbed Kai Chi's hand and slowly put it down with a frown. She took out a porcelain bottle from her inner world and handed it to Kai Chi. Who else came into contact with this letter besides you? Kai Chi's heart sank with a thump. Tea shopkeeper Hu and a worker also read it. Arbor rubbed her forehead, feeling a headache coming on. Call them in. She paused for a moment, then took out a few more bottles of pills from her inner world. Forget it. Go and give them to everyone in Kaidai Pavilion. Tell them to take one each. Kai Chi's heart thumped wildly, and she asked in a trembling voice, but there's something wrong with this letter. Arbor nodded. Once the poison enters the body, anyone below the spiritual realm will silently die within 3 days. Everyone in Kaidai Veranda was an ordinary mystic realm cultivator. Most of them were still normal people, so they naturally couldn't resist this kind of poison. Kai Chi was so frightened that cold sweat broke out on her forehead. Who exactly is it that wants to make life difficult for the entire Kaidai Veranda? Arbor was silent for a long time before she said indifferently, they want to make life difficult for me. However, Huifeng thought of another question. Crown Princess, can this poison be transmitted through the human body? From yesterday until now, the workers in Kaidai Veranda should have come into contact with many outsiders. Arbor shook his head. It's not that magical. The poison is attached to the paper. It has to be touched by the skin to enter the body. After it enters the human body, it travels through the meridians and accumulates in the heart at a very fast speed. Therefore, if it's quick, it'll take 1 day, and if it's slow, it'll take 3 days. I've lost this round, Arbor said calmly. Until now, she still did not know who was the one who set fire to Kaidai Pavilion and ordered the Zhang family to take the lead. Her own subordinate, Kai Xiu, had been severely injured by the fire. Although she could be saved, she still had to suffer a lot. The letter was written in Arbor's own handwriting, stating that he had accidentally learned that a mob had gathered to cause trouble at the Kaidai Pavilion. He told Kai Xiu to immediately go to the Kaidai Pavilion and discuss countermeasures with the shopkeeper. If something happened to Kai Xiu, she was to take the Eastern Palace token and go to the capital office. It was written really well. No wonder Kai Xiu fell for it. If the mastermind behind the scenes was able to pull this off first, the Kaidai Pavilion's poor management would cause the mob to attack and cause its reputation to plummet. At the same time, the little crown princess's reputation would also plummet. Second, the Kaidai Pavilion's shopkeeper and workers would suddenly die within 3 days after coming into contact with the letter. Third, an even bigger rumor was very likely waiting for them at this moment. For example, the Kaidai Pavilion's dishes were unclean, and even their shopkeeper and workers had died without knowing why. Another example was that the little crown princess was a natural jinx and a star of misfortune. Chapter 2854. Kaidai Veranda had always been well managed by the Mu family, but as soon as the little crown princess took it back, it had to face the consequences of poor management and bankruptcy. Perhaps by the time she returned from the academy, the legend of her being the source of disaster would be spreading through the entire capital again. This kind of method really seemed to be the work of her old rival. That old rival who didn't let her have an easy time, skillfully and thoughtfully laid out this scheme. If she hadn't suddenly appeared and rushed back, perhaps all of this really would have developed uncontrollably according to that person's scheme. Arbor pursed her lips and reflexively clenched her fists, stubbornly controlling the overwhelming emotions in her heart. If that old rival was right in front of her right now, she probably would have uncontrollably torn him to shreds. Arbor took a deep breath and looked down at Kai Xiu, who was lying on the bed with her eyes tightly shut. After instructing someone to bring in water, Arbor skillfully removed the layers of cloth wrapping around Kai Xiu's face. She first carefully cleaned her wounds before applying ointment on them. Afterwards, she stood up and instructed Kai Chi, who was standing to the side, the wounds on her face will hurt and itch for the next 2 days. When she wakes up, you can't let her scratch at the wounds. Watch her carefully. She'll gradually recover after applying this ointment for 3 days. At that time, the numbness and itchiness will gradually disappear. Yes, Crown Princess. This servant will definitely watch over her carefully. Arbor handed a bottle of pills to her. If she really can't take the pain anymore, let her take one. Yes. Arbor pursed her lips and walked out of the room with a taut expression. When the door to the side room slammed shut, she looked up at the sky under the setting sun, her eyes so heavy that they looked like they could drip water. This person went to great lengths to set a trap for her, scheming to smear the Kaidai Veranda's reputation. She truly put in a lot of effort. She reached out to rub her aching head. She vaguely thought of something in her mind, but it disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Since she couldn't think of it, then she wouldn't think about it. Kai Xiu couldn't really move due to her injuries, so Arbor had Kai Chi stay behind to take care of her while she led Huifeng, Li Yi, and the others back to the Eastern Palace. As night approached, Hui Feng came to report with a slightly unsightly expression. He said that the 8 members of the Zhang clan who had been imprisoned in the Ministry of Justice's prison had all suddenly died. Arbor was so angry that he smashed the teacup on the ground. Zhao Tingdong, Eunuch Qin, Aunt Jing, and the others didn't even dare to breathe loudly as they lowered their heads. Good, good. Very good. Arbor repeatedly muttered, his eyes shining with a fierce light. She felt as if she had missed something. It turned out that the poison that could cause sudden death was indeed set up by the Zhang family. This old opponent of hers was still as ruthless and swift as ever, causing her to suffer an imperceptible defeat once again. Although the Zhang family was despicable, they wouldn't go so far as to kill their entire family. Being imprisoned was just to teach the greedy Zhang family a lesson they would never forget. Now the lesson of the greedy Zhang family was truly long-lasting. Their entire family's lives were paid for it. Is there anyone left in the Zhang family? At the same time this subordinate received the news, old Madame Zhang's only remaining grandson has already gone to the capital magistrate's office to sue the crown princess. Eunuch Qin couldn't help but say angrily, what's he suing the crown princess for? Even if his entire family died in prison, shouldn't he be suing the Ministry of Justice for their lack of supervision? The end. Chapter 28:55. Arbor pursed her lips. Although she was very unhappy, she quickly calmed down. Prepare the carriage, we're going to the capital office. Crown Princess, you're in the eye of the storm right now. Do you really want to go to the capital office? Aunt Jing hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. Arbor nodded, let's go. Everyone couldn't persuade her. Taking advantage of the night, they boarded the carriage and accompanied Arbor to the capital office. Hearing that the crown princess had arrived, Chao Jiedo hurriedly brought Wu Xiaoyin to welcome her. He invited her into the inner hall and offered her tea. After a short while, he led a long-faced man in his 20s over. That man was wearing a brown robe. His clothes were very simple. He had thick eyebrows and big eyes. Seeing the little crown princess sitting on the armchair, he didn't panic. He only raised his eyes and bowed. This commoner Zhang Enjie greets the crown princess. Arbor put down the teacup in her hand and nodded at him. You came to the capital office in the middle of the night and beat the drum to accuse me. This matter is now known by all. Zhang Enjie lowered his eyes and obediently knelt in front of Arbor. Arbor didn't let him get up. He also didn't get up. He only knelt there with his back ramrod straight. Where's the complaint? Chao Jiedo only felt that the complaint was very hot. He took it and handed it to the little crown princess, then silently retreated to the side. The little crown princess silently read for a minute. Then, with a "pa" sound, she slapped the complaint on the table beside her. The entire inner hall was silent. Chao Jiedo and several other officials felt a heavy pressure in their hearts. The little girl was very young, but her aura was very strong. You've read books. This complaint is written clearly and with great emotion. It's really not bad. Arbor said coldly. Her sharp gaze fell on Zhang Enjie. But in your complaint, you say that this crown princess ordered the Ministry of Justice to punish the 8 members of the Zhang family. What basis do you have? Based on your own far-fetched conjecture. Zhang Enjie suddenly raised his head. When I went to the prison to visit, the people in the Ministry of Justice's prison didn't allow me to get close at all. If you're not guilty, then what is it? Arbor looked at the man coldly. You're Zhang Enjie. Yes. Why didn't you come today? I'm sorry to disappoint the crown princess. Zhang Enjie retorted indifferently. This commoner disapproved of grandmother and father coming to Kai-Dai brothel to cause trouble from the very beginning. Arbor looked at him deeply. Come with me. I'll have to trouble Lord Chao to accompany me. Crown Princess's words are too serious. Chao Jieto was overwhelmed by the favor and said, "This is this official's responsibility. Crown Princess, please, please." Thus, Chao Jieto and Wu Xiaoyin accompanied Arbor's group to the Ministry of Justice's prison. When Assistant Minister Zhou received the news that the 8 members of the Zhang family had died, he knew that the situation was not good. He immediately reported the matter to his superior, Minister Fang. Now that he knew that the Crown Princess's group had arrived, Minister Fang led Assistant Minister Zhou to the main entrance to welcome them and led them to the prison. Assistant Minister Zhou had long expected that someone would come to investigate the prison after such a big incident. Thus, he had ordered the jailers to tidy up the prison. Those frightening torture instruments were all put away. When they walked into the prison, they saw that it was still clean. "Crown Princess, this way please." Assistant Minister Zhou ordered the jailers to lead the way and led the group to the prison where the Zhang family had previously stayed. Chapter 2856. Looking through the thick and round wooden fence, the 8 corpses were still neatly placed there. It looked like they had been tidied up and were still clean. Zhang Enjie's fingers clenched tightly as he subconsciously arched his back. His eyes stared intently at the 8 corpses in the cell. Although his grandmother and father were greedy, they were still his closest family. Now that he had reached this point, he felt very bad. He especially regretted leaving them at noon and climbing the mountain alone to relax. He should have tried his best to stop it. Even if he couldn't stop it, he should have followed and interceded for them. Arbor ordered someone to open the cell door and walked inside. The thin Minister Fang hurriedly stopped her. "Crown Princess, it's too dirty inside. Why don't you get someone to carry them outside?" "No need." Arbor waved her hand expressionlessly and walked in quickly. Slowly wrapping a cloth around her hands, Arbor squatted down and looked at the 8 corpses one by one. Then she stood up. "It's the same poison as Mr. Zhang and Squire Li. What do you mean?" Zhang Enjie was shocked. He couldn't help but look straight at the little Crown Princess. "You're a smart person. You should know." Arbor said indifferently, "Your grandmother and father were ordered by someone to come to Kaidai Loft to cause trouble. They were exposed and locked up in prison. You can see now that the wounds on their bodies are not fatal." Qiao Mu sneered as she pointed at the rod and whip wounds of varying depths on the 8 members of the Zhang clan. "It's a fatal poison that took their lives." Zhang Enjie's breath stopped slightly. "Crown Princess, what evidence do you have for saying that?" Qiao Mu swiped her hand, and she saw a small, ordinary sparrow hopping in her hand. Her other hand took out a silver needle and pressed it against the little sparrow. She gently pricked its little claw and said expressionlessly, "This silver needle is not poisonous." Zhang Enjie could not help but look embarrassed. He nodded and said, "This commoner naturally believes that the high and mighty Crown Princess would definitely not deceive commoners like us. I'm going to extract some poison from your grandmother's body." Arbor ignored him and said coldly. She inserted the silver needle into the old woman's heart. When he took out the silver needles, everyone leaned over to take a look, but they didn't find anything strange. The silver needle was still an ordinary silver needle, and it didn't turn black after encountering the poison. The little Crown Princess gently pressed down on the little bird with one hand and once again pierced the silver needle into its little claw. "This poison entered your grandmother's body and flowed through her meridians toward her heart. The poison that has accumulated in the heart can be said to be the essence of the poison. A person this big will die in at least a day or 3 days. Therefore, this poison essence will take effect in less than 15 minutes in the body of such a small sparrow." She placed the little sparrow on the ground. At first, the little sparrow happily jumped a few times on the ground, but in less than a few minutes, its body tilted to the ground and it let out a weak cry. Its claws struggled a few times before its movements gradually slowed down. Arbor quickly stepped forward and picked up the little sparrow and dripped 2 drops of medicine into its mouth. Not long after, the little thing stretched its little wings and slowly recovered. Chapter 28:57. Although he still looked dispirited, at least his life was saved. The little stoic straightened up and turned to look at them. Her gaze landed on Zhang and Jie's face. If you still feel suspicious, you can find someone to test this poison. Don't say that I lied to you. When everyone present heard this, they all took a step back in unison, leaving Zhang and Jie standing alone in front of the Crown Prince Consort with a bewildered expression. The little Crown Princess looked at him with a stoic expression. She frowned and raised the silver needle that was tainted with poison in her hand. So it turns out you want to personally experience this poison. That's fine too. Zhang and Jie hastily retreated, but Minister Fang and his group of troublemakers retreated even faster than him. They all retreated out of the prison cell and even closed the door on their way out. They left him alone in the same prison cell as the little Crown Princess, this extremely dangerous person. Zhang and Jie was a bit stupefied. He turned to look at Minister Fang and his group, who had calm and innocent expressions, through the prison door. Doesn't your conscience hurt by doing this? The little Crown Princess held a needle in her hand and walked toward him step by step. Don't worry. Although the treatment is a bit troublesome, it will definitely save you. Zhang and Jie's expression changed again, and he kept retreating while repeatedly saying, Don't, Crown Princess. This commoner believes you. Please don't insert needles. It wasn't like he was sick and had to personally experience the potency of this poison. He had already seen clearly what the little bird had gone through. There was no need for him to experience it himself. The little stoic said expressionlessly with a sour expression, Weren't you looking at me with a suspicious gaze from start to finish? No. Absolutely not. Zhang and Jie hastily waved his hand. As the wife of the heir apparent of the divine province, the Crown Princess naturally wouldn't deceive a commoner like me. When the little Crown Princess withdrew the poison needle in her hand, Zhang and Jie's eyelid twitched. You! That needle! She kept the poison needle in her hand. If she was careless and pricked herself, wouldn't she be in big trouble? This action seemed to be very dangerous. The little stoic glanced at him indifferently. It can't hurt me. You, on the other hand. She looked at him and asked indifferently, Do you want to know who the mastermind behind the death of your family is? Yes. Zhang and Jie nodded heavily. Then you can stay and help out at Kaidai Pavilion. Arbor glanced at him. Until we catch the mastermind and find out who killed the 8 members of your Zhang family. Zhang and Jie couldn't help being stunned. Crown Prince Consort, they wanted to hire him to work for Kaidai Pavilion. That's exactly what you think. The little stoic coldly swept him a glance. Your handwriting isn't bad. In the future, stay at Kaidai restaurant and help write recipes. When the people outside the cell heard this, they couldn't help but stagger and almost fall to the ground. Their dear Crown Princess. How could this little person be so comical? You came to accuse me without evidence and caused a bit of damage to my reputation, so I'll deduct half a year's worth of your salary. Zhang and Jie, what happened? Why was his salary deducted for half a year before he even started work for no reason? After half a year, I'll give you a salary of 1,000 spirit coins per month. You'll get more money if you do well, and scram if you don't. Chapter 28:58. Zhang and Jie looked at the young crown princess in front of him with an awed expression. Outside the prison cell, Minister Fang and his group had long been unable to look straight at him. For some reason, they actually started to sympathize with Zhang and Jie, this hothead, from the bottom of their hearts. It's the funeral of the 8 members of the Zhang family. Minister Fang hastily said, this humble official has already submitted a memorial to His Majesty regarding this matter. His Majesty has clearly stated that this family should be properly buried. Oh, then the royal court will pay for the funeral expenses, right? The little stoic muttered before turning to say to Zhang and Jie, once you're done, I'll give you 10 days off. If there's nothing else, come back to work earlier. The 10 days of leave I gave Zhang and Jie are equivalent to 500 spirit coins a day. The royal court will compensate me with this money. Everyone collapsed to the ground in shock. Aren't you stingy? Not only did you make Zhang and Jie work for free for half a year, you even gave him 10 days off and wanted the royal court to compensate you. Speaking of which, you only gave Zhang and Jie a monthly stipend of 1,000, but when you asked the royal court for compensation, it became 500 a day. Where exactly did this weirdo come from? How did the emperor end up with a daughter-in-law like you? Is there a problem? When the little stoic saw Minister Fang and the others twitching their eyebrows and eyes, she couldn't help but ask. Minister Fang rolled his eyes, and Assistant Minister Zhou hastily walked up behind him and secretly poked him in the waist. Minister Fang adjusted his expression and coughed lightly, saying, Crown Princess, there's no problem. This humble official will draft a memorial to this matter and present it to His Majesty. Emichim, the young Crown Princess, nodded calmly in the midst of chaos. He got off easy. Who got off easy? Everyone speechlessly asked the heavens. You think that the emperor got off easy, right? You only asked for 5,000 in compensation because you think it's too little, right? Minister Fang and the others followed the young crown princess out of the prison in a daze, pondering a very strange question the entire time. Why didn't one of the crown princess workers come to work and insist on asking the emperor for compensation? Meanwhile, Zhang and Jie was also pondering a serious question. Why was he in such a rush to work for the little crown princess? And why was his allowance for half a year deducted for no reason? Why did it feel like the little crown princess didn't lose anything after this matter was settled? She even gained a cheap helper that night. Minister Fang wrote the memorial and presented it to His Majesty the next day. The memorial was written with great emotion, praising the crown princess from head to toe, saying that she was smart and talented, that she could solve cases like a god, and that she was able to determine the cause of death of 8 people with a single silver needle. The censorate Darren followed Minister Fang and Assistant Minister Zhou's group in praising the young crown prince consort. The great emperor couldn't help but laugh. Yesterday, when he received the news that Zhang Jiazi had gone to the capital office to sue the crown princess, he had been secretly happy for a while. He thought that he would most likely receive many impeachment memorials from the courtiers today. Finally, he had an excuse to bring his youngest daughter-in-law in front of him and give her a good scolding. He wanted to vent the anger and frustration that he had suffered since meeting the young crown princess. He didn't expect that during the court session today, these old fellows acted as if nothing had happened. Not a single one of them mentioned the crown princess, not to mention the impeachment memorials. There was no such thing at all. Right now, Minister Fang's memorial was actually singing the praises of the young crown prince consort. This group of cunning fellows must think that the young crown princess was a tough nut to crack, so they didn't dare to do anything. A group of bastards who changed their rudder according to the wind. Wait. Chapter 28:59. In the end, Minister Fang's memorial eulogized the Zhang family, and he even proposed that the imperial court compensate the Zhang family with funeral expenses. Alright, that was fine. After all, the person died in the Ministry of Justice's prison, and the imperial court had to shoulder this inexplicable blame. So be it if there were funeral expenses. But the problem was that Minister Fang mentioned the final 5,000 spirit coins as a delayed labor fee. What was this? The imperial court had to pay for this. When Mo Lushing heard about this baffling compensation of 5,000 spirit coins, he couldn't help but laugh in exasperation. Although the officials below didn't dare to say anything, the faces of Prince Kong, the Prince of Giant Pain, and the others standing in the front row were clearly twitching, and they were secretly suppressing their laughter. The princes were mostly rejoicing in other people's misfortune, right? Mo Lushing swept a glance at Prince Kong. Stop pretending, you almost can't suppress the smile on your lips. Mo Lushing felt that if this little stoic was in front of him right now, perhaps he would personally beat her up. The Emperor of the Divine Province expressionlessly looked at Minister Fong. Fong Hongliang's heart was like a small boat floating in a small river, sinking and sinking, about to sink to the bottom of the water. Then, he heard the Emperor icily mutter, "Approved." Fong Hongliang hurriedly breathed a sigh of relief. The Emperor's handsome face was cold as he said word by word, "Have the Crown Prince Consort scram back to the Royal Academy before noon. Don't be so dispirited and lazy after only 2 days of classes." Everyone silently hung their heads, and their mouths twitched one after another. How sullen was our Emperor in his heart that he didn't even want to see the little Crown Princess's face. He only wanted her to scram far, far away, and it was best if she didn't return for the time being. After everyone retreated from the royal court, they couldn't help but wipe away their sweat. The Emperor always suffered a setback in front of the young couple. If this continued, who knew if he would get sick from holding it in? Achoo! Far away in the Royal Academy, Mo Lien looked up at the bit of dawn that peeked out from the east and pursed her lips with a sigh. Why wasn't his wifey back yet? Good morning, Crown Prince. Little Fatty was sweating all the way as he ran over from the backyard. He flashed 2 rows of white teeth at Prince Mo. Morning. Mo Lien nodded and looked at the little fatty and asked, "When did you come back last night?" The little fatty's hand that was wiping his sweat froze slightly. He turned his head mechanically and looked at the Crown Prince guiltily. "Ah. What is it?" The Crown Prince snorted. "Why do you think that fellow doesn't even have a single guard by his side?" Little Fatty's mouth twitched, and his expression was one of sudden realization. He hurried to the Crown Prince's side and asked in a low voice, Your Highness, you did it. Do I look like such a boring person?" Mo Lien haughtily glanced at him before turning around to walk outside. Today, the instructor from the weapon refining hall wanted them to head over early. After yesterday's lecture on theory, they would probably have to personally make a storage cabinet today. The Wind Thunder City was so big that storage cabinets were indispensable. The storage cabinets in the entire Wind Thunder City were basically made by the students of the Royal Academy's refining hall. Although storage cabinets were useful, they were difficult to make and the process was extremely long. Therefore, it was really the most difficult practical course to pass in the refining hall. Because the storage space of each storage cabinet was different from the amount of magnetite required to be consumed, every storage item that required more than 10 magnetite was a defective product. After all, the storage cabinet could only be fixed in one place, and it wasn't very convenient to store items. Chapter 2860. If each storage cost more than 10 pieces of magnetite, then they really couldn't afford it. In addition, now that they were all using spirit coins, the blacksmiths were required to keep up with the times and improve their own storage cabinets. In yesterday's theory class, they were required to use spirit coins to replace magnetite storage during the process of making the storage cabinets. Of course, the consumption of spirit coins had to be controlled within 5 spirit coins. If the price was too high, the commoners in the city would definitely not be able to afford it. Today's task was to make this storage cabinet. Of course, it was impossible for most people to make a storage cabinet in a day. His Highness the Crown Prince missed his wife and was somewhat absent-minded. During the practical class, the crafting furnace and spirit fire that everyone used were all provided by the academy. Soon, the absent-minded crown prince caused a stir in the weapon refining hall on the way to the cafeteria at noon. All the students of the Divine Prefecture branch were talking about their crown prince's miraculous feat of casually making a storage cabinet in half an hour. Everyone said, "His Highness is too miraculous." Even the students of the weapon refining hall felt a sense of pride. It is indeed miraculous. The teachers gave us 2 days. I didn't expect that His Highness the Crown Prince would only need half an hour to make such a perfect storage cabinet. Not to mention the tens of thousands of times of storage, each storage only costs 1 spirit coin. If this storage cabinet is placed in the city, it will definitely be very convenient for everyone. Yes, yes. I heard that Principal Yun personally talked to His Highness the Crown Prince about this. He probably wants His Highness to make a few more storage cabinets so that the school can buy them. His Highness doesn't lack money. That's right. He's just doing it for fun. Someone immediately revealed the truth. Countless people beat their chests and stamped their feet. They kept shouting in their hearts, "God is too unfair. Why did it have to be given to the person who was born with a silver spoon in his mouth who had such high intelligence and skills?" This matter spread throughout the entire imperial school. Not only was the entire Divine Prefecture branches shocked, even the Underworld and Sangzhou branches were shocked. A portion of the people from Sangzhou and Underworld didn't know Mo Lian yet, so they were eager to make friends with His Highness who had extraordinary refining skills. Students who were used to eating lunch usually went to the royal school's cafeteria to settle their lunch. Today, the hall was especially full. Everyone, regardless of whether they were here to eat or not, wanted to see the Crown Prince. When Mo Lian and Duan Yu walked in side by side, they saw several hundred to 1,000 pairs of eyes simultaneously turning to look at them. Everyone was dazzled by the two of them, and then there were all kinds of love-struck screams. Little Fatty and Qi Xianxian hurriedly rushed to the front and blocked the crowd who wanted to surround them. They used their hands to block them. "What are you doing? What are you guys doing? Step back and don't come any closer. I'm warning you, whoever takes another step forward, be careful of my fist." What a joke. Without Jojo around, the heavy responsibility of protecting His Highness would fall on their shoulders. They absolutely could not allow any female creature to take advantage of Jojo's absence to approach His Highness. Prince Lian. Suddenly, a person shouted and squeezed through the crowd with all his might, pouncing over to hug Mo Lian's leg. How could Mo Lian let him hug her? She quickly dodged back, causing him to miss. The 6th watch ended. Chapter 2861. Everyone's mouths involuntarily twitched when they took a closer look. Not only did the lunging student have an unshaven beard, but his greasy hair also drooped on his head. From his appearance, he looked like a large dog that had wandered outside for many years. Duan Yu took a step back and glanced at Prince Mo with a spurious smile. He teased, "Oh, Your Highness Lotus, could this be one of your family's lost brothers?" The Mo family produced talented people. No matter how unsightly someone like Mo Kuan was, he didn't seem to have such a terrible appearance as this fellow in front of them. "Your Highness, my name is Xing Tianyang. I would like to enter Your Highness' tutelage, please accept me as your disciple." This fellow dropped to his knees with a plop, looking like he had suffered a great grievance. His words made people spit out laughter. "You want to get close to us with this appearance of yours?" The little fatty abruptly stopped midway through his tirade. His eyes widened, and he couldn't resist exclaiming, "What? You want to take Her Highness Lotus as your master?" Was this punk here to make fun of them? Judging from his age, this punk was probably in his 30s, right? Mo Lian glanced at Xing Tianyang exasperatedly. "Don't block the way. What kind of joke was this? He didn't want to accept such a greasy disciple. Right, don't block the way. Everyone repeatedly shouted for Xing Tianyang to move aside. The group was all blocked at the entrance. Xing Tianyang crawled over and wanted to hug Mo Lian's thigh again. Your Highness. I beg you to take me in. Take me in, Your Highness. Your Highness. Take me in. Everyone looked up at the sky speechlessly. This Xing Tianyang couldn't have a hole in his head, right? With his stinky appearance, whoever took him in would be unlucky. If they took this fellow in, wouldn't they pass out from his stench every day? Duan Yu lowered his head, unable to suppress the smile on his lips. Since Xing Tianyang is so sincere, why don't you take him in? Xing Tianyang cast a grateful glance at Duan Yu. Mo Lian cast a glance at Duan Yu before chuckling and thanking his family. She then strode past Xing Tianyang. Seeing this, Xing Tianyang hurriedly got up and ran a few steps, chasing after Mo Lian and shouting, Your Highness Lian, please accept me. Your Highness Lian, I really want you with all my sincerity. The little fatty swung his round arm and pushed Xing Tianyang to the side. Xing Tianyang's voice suddenly stopped. The door of the private room on the second floor of the dining hall was pushed open, and a man who was wrapped up tightly came out, only revealing a pair of eyes. A group of people clustered around that person as he walked down the stairs and bumped into Mo Lian, Duan Yu, and the others. The corners of little fatty's mouth twitched. He lowered his head and his shoulders trembled slightly. Qi Xianxian also glanced at that person, then coughed and took a few steps back. At this moment, a male student who was holding a tray of food happened to turn around, and the bowl of soup in his hand hit the masked man. The soup spilled out and spilled onto the tightly wrapped man's chest, wetting a small patch. Hey! Someone beside the man immediately shouted, How can you walk like that? Don't you have eyes? Sorry. When the male student saw these people's stance, he quickly lowered his head and apologized profusely. The man who reprimanded him walked up and smacked him. With a clang, the bowl of soup in the male student's hand fell to the ground, creating quite a commotion and attracting many people's attention. Do you know who this is? That person put his hands on his hips, looking like a fox exploiting the tiger's might. Chapter 2862. The male student hurriedly shook his head, revealing a look of fear and trepidation. He was just an ordinary student of the Red River tribe, and didn't belong to any of the 3 branches. His tribe was weak, and no one dared to provoke people from the 3 branches. Besides, he was just a new student this year, and he didn't want to cause any trouble in the school. The person who smashed someone's soup bowl pushed the male student with an unforgiving look. Do you think you can just say a few words of apology? Ba Shu. Su Yonyang frowned and shouted at the burly man, Stop it, come back. The man called Ba Shu looked back at his master. Seeing that his master didn't say anything, he could only walk back resentfully. Su Yonyang understood her master's mood very well. At this time, her master didn't want to talk nonsense with others at all. He wrapped himself up like this because he didn't want to attract attention. However, this idiot Ba Shu made a fuss over such a small matter. He wanted everyone's attention to them and make her master more embarrassed. Yo! Isn't this the Crown Prince of Zhangzhou, His Highness Li? Suddenly, an idiot jumped out of nowhere and slapped Zhangzhou's Crown Prince Rong Li's shoulder as if he was very familiar with him. Rong Li's face stiffened. When this dumbass slapped him, he had accidentally pulled off his tightly wrapped hood. Thus, His Highness Li's bruised and swollen face was presented in front of everyone. Pfft! A student nearby couldn't hold back his laughter and burst out laughing. The rice grains in his mouth were scattered all over the place. What are you laughing at? don't you want to live anymore? Ba Shu, the old man, straightened his neck and roared in a gruff voice. Oh my God, are you serious? Your Highness Li, you look like this. What's wrong with you? The person cried out in surprise, blinking his eyes and covering his mouth with his hand in shock, expressing his shock and bewilderment in a timely manner. Hell leopard. Li spat out these two words from between his teeth. His pair of narrowed eyes that were almost invisible stared fixedly at the grinning young man in front of him. Ah! Ming Bao reached out to pick at his ears. Rubbing his chin, he looked at him in shock and said, Your Highness Li, you couldn't have been beaten up by someone, right? Who dares to make a move on our Highness Li? Ming Bao said with a shocked expression. Oh my heavens! Wah wah wah, Prince Lu, come and see. His Highness Li was beaten up so badly that his eyes can't even be found. Everyone couldn't help but twitch their lips. Beside him, vassal Prince Lu, who had been loudly called out to, helplessly raised his hand to rub his forehead. He turned to look at Mo Lian's party and stepped forward to bow. Mo Lu greets Your Highness the Crown Prince and His Highness Prince Chin. Mo Lian nodded slightly as he discreetly sized up this handsome and elegant cousin of his. Although they were both princes, this Prince Yong and was obviously not on the same level as the Prince Jian Pain. He was much more promising than the Prince Jian Pain. Hey, don't be so polite. We are all cousins, and we are in the academy now, not the imperial court. There's no need to be so particular. Ming Bao came forward and tugged at child Lu. Lu, look. Chapter 2863. I saw it. Mo Lu helplessly face-bombed. He suddenly felt that he shouldn't have acted on a whim today and followed this dunce to the dining hall for a meal. Didn't he see that His Highness the Crown Prince Li's face was already the color of a pig? This guy actually dared to add fuel to the fire and still fearlessly provoked this prince. Wasn't he afraid that he would get enraged and slap him to death? What's going on? Ming Bao giggled as he approached Li. He sized him up several times and clicked his tongue. Heavens, this beating is too ruthless. Who exactly did this? Have you found out? Your Highness Li, as long as you say the word, I will definitely help you ferret this person out to vent this anger. There's no need to trouble Your Highness, Li replied ambiguously and was about to walk outside. Unexpectedly, the moment he moved, he saw Duan Yu's handsome face diagonally opposite him with a spurious smile. He was instantly enraged. The more he looked at this punk's enigmatic face, the more he felt that he was the main culprit who put a gunny sack over him in the middle of the night. Speaking of this matter, Li was truly so angry that he wanted to kick the bucket. He really didn't expect that he would be put in a gunny sack in the dark while taking a stroll outside his own courtyard and taking a look at the academy's night scenery. At that time, he felt uncomfortable all over, as if he was drugged and couldn't use any spiritual energy at all. What was worse was that he had already used a blood stasis dispelling pill on his face earlier, but it was clearly ineffective and couldn't dispel the blood stasis at all. It wasn't like he was so bored that he was willing to wander around the dining hall with this ugly face that had been beaten black and blue. He had made an appointment with 2 seniors from the pill hall to come here to get a blood stasis dispelling pill. Unexpectedly, this blood stasis dispelling pill was completely useless, and he just so happened to run into Ming Bao, this lawless person, so it was even more tragic. At this moment, everyone in the cafeteria was whispering to each other behind their backs. They were secretly laughing and talking about this crown prince from the Tsang province. He was mocking him, the crown prince, for being beaten up so badly. Even his father, the Tsangzhou emperor, wouldn't be able to recognize this crown prince if he were to stand in front of him right now. Rongli flew into a rage out of humiliation and glared at Duanyu, but the latter naturally responded with an innocent expression. Let's go. Rongli flicked his sleeves and started walking, but before he could take 2 steps, he was stopped by Deep Leopard. Don't go, big brother Rongli. Who's your big brother? Rongli angrily threw away his hand and snorted coldly. At this moment, he just needed a hole to burrow into. Although his face was beaten out of shape and his eyes were narrowed into slits, he could still feel the burning pain on his face. He wanted to curse out loud. Damn it, if he didn't find out who was the one behind his back, he would definitely take that person's life. No, it's them. It should be a group of people who beat him up last night. At the very least, he could feel several fists of different sizes raining down on his face. He really couldn't figure out who he had provoked. At this moment, Rongli was blocked in the dining hall by Deep Leopard, and his face was so dark that it could drip water. Go away. Don't, big brother Rongli. We haven't seen each other for many years, right? Now that we finally meet, let's sit down and reminisce about old times. If you want to reminisce, find your crown prince to reminisce about old times. I'm not familiar with you. Rongli irritably threw away that guy's hand. Chapter 2864. Ming Bao pursed his lips and said unwillingly, I don't like talking to that guy. When he thought of Ming Yassi's face, Ming Bao felt like he couldn't eat anymore. Rongli really wanted to yell, scram at him. But fortunately, the good upbringing in his bones allowed him to forcibly restrain this vulgar word. His Highness Rongli was about to suffer internal injuries from the stifling. Wow, His Highness Yassi, it's His Highness Yassi. Oh my god, the young sirs from the Qin family are all here. Hurry, hurry, hurry and support me. Why do I feel like my eyes aren't enough to see? The young sir's outstanding appearances dazzled all the female students present. They were clearly standing in a very ordinary cafeteria, but in their eyes, it was as if they were standing on a hillside filled with flourishing flowers and fluttering willow leaves. Facing them were several extraordinarily handsome young sirs in full bloom. I heard His Highness the Crown Prince of Zhangzhou was severely injured from the beating. Where is he? Ollie followed behind Ming Yassi, and every time he opened his mouth, he would say something that was infuriating. Everyone from Zhangzhou involuntarily wanted to grind their teeth. My apologies, my eldest brother isn't seriously injured. Sorry to disappoint you. Duanyu turned back to rebuke him with a grin. Ollie pursed his lips, but when he saw Duanyu refuting him, he didn't say anything else. Ming Yassi quickly walked to Mo Lian and looked around before asking with a frown, where is she? What does it have to do with you? Mo Lian and Duanyu answered in unison. Our dear Ming Yassi's face darkened. I have something to say to her. Scram. Mo Lian threw him a word. Ming Yassi's handsome face darkened. Mo Lian, speak properly with me. Seeing that they were conversing, Rongli wanted to circle around them and leave. He really didn't freaking want to continue exposing his ugly side in front of so many outstanding youths. Prince Mo was famous in the 3 provinces because of his extraordinary talent in weapon refinement. Could it be that he, Rongli, was going to be famous because he was beaten up? Hey, big brother Rongli, Underworld Leopard didn't give up and continued to block his path. Rongli's face was so ugly that it was about to emit a yellow light. What are you doing? If it were any other time, his stern shout and glare would definitely be able to intimidate many people. But now he had been beaten so badly that the bruises on his face couldn't be removed. The slits in his eyes couldn't be opened at all. How could he still widen his eyes to show his majesty? However, it made his narrowed eyes look especially comical. Ha 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 ha. Little Fatty suddenly laughed out loud. Everyone turned to look at him as if they were looking at a brave warrior. To be able to laugh out loud in front of the Crown Prince of Tsang Province without giving him any face, he was truly courageous. Look, he can't even open his eyes. Rong Li's face was red with shame and anger. Su Yonyang couldn't help scolding, how dare you? Even the Crown Prince of Tsang Province is throwing his weight around in our divine province. Mo Lien glanced at Su Yonyang in displeasure. Duan Yu said with a chuckle, since we're all in the same academy, then there's only the difference between schools and students. We're all classmates, so at least we're all equal in the academy. There's no such thing as being impudent or not. Rong Li turned his head and forcefully squeezed out of the crowd. He simply didn't want to waste any more words with them. He had lost a lot of face. Chapter 2865. Ming Bao still wanted to go up and pull him back, but Ba Shu and the others rudely blocked him. Your Highness, please conduct yourself with dignity. Conduct himself with what dignity? He really was a guy who couldn't take a joke. He flew into a rage out of humiliation and stormed off in a huff. Ming Bao harumphed and scooted over to the Duke of Eternal Peace's heir, Mo Lu. He tugged at his sleeve and said, "Ah Lu, let's not play with Rong Li in the future. He really is a miser who can't afford to play, humph." Mo Lu couldn't help but facepalm. Today, Zhangzhou's crown prince was utterly humiliated in this cafeteria. His heart was probably about to bleed from holding it in. Let's go eat, Duan Yu muttered before walking up to the private room on the second floor. When the greasy youth, Xing Tianyang, who was glaring covetously from the side, saw this, he hastily howled and wanted to pounce over, but he was stopped by two men in black who suddenly appeared. Fuck, how many days has it been since that person bathed? His body is about to grow fur and stink to death. Little Fatty pinched his nose and followed Duan Yu and the others upstairs. The group sat down in the private room and ordered more than a dozen dishes. They chatted as they ate. What's up with his face? Mo Lien couldn't help but twitch her mouth when she recalled Rong Li's wretched appearance. Last night, he discovered Little Fatty and the others sneaking out, so he followed them and took care of several hidden sentries that Rong Li had placed in the shadows. Hence, Prince Mo played a significant role in why Little Fatty, Qi Xianxian, and the others were able to beat up Rong Li so easily. Duan Yu picked up his teacup and took a sip. Thank you, everyone, for standing up for me. Qi Xianxian waved her hand as she ate. Jojo said he was going to beat him up. Then the wound on his face hasn't healed even now because, Duan Yu said exasperatedly, Jojo even left behind medicine. Lu Yu quickly shook his head. Jojo didn't leave it behind on purpose. It's just that we have many different kinds of medicinal powders on us. Every time Jojo made a variety of strange powders, he would make a lot of them at once. They were in a favorable position, so when they saw something useful, they would take a portion for themselves. This time, while beating Rong Li violently, he had drugged him with a special powder that would aggravate his injuries and prevent his bruises from dispersing. As for why Rong Li felt that he couldn't use his spiritual energy, it wasn't because Little Fatty and the others had such a powerful powder. This was all thanks to Prince Mo, who had secretly sealed Rong Li's spiritual energy. Otherwise, if Rong Li had made a ruckus, how could the Little Fatty and the others have been beaten up so smoothly and quietly? Prince Mo, who was adding fuel to the fire, felt that whatever his wife wanted to do was also his business, so he had to help without holding back. At the same time, he also wanted to let his wife's group of friends have a good time. Duan Yu laughed heartily. I've been back in Zhangzhou for so long, but this is the first time I've seen Rong Li's face contort from anger, ha 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 ha. Now that I think about it, it's hilarious. How long can the wound on his face last? It has to last until Jojo returns. Qi Xianxian picked up some food with her chopsticks and stuffed it into her mouth as she mumbled, "We've toiled for half the night, so we definitely have to let Jojo see the results of our battle." Duan Yu and Mo Lian were both speechless. It turned out that the main reason they used this special powder was because Jojo wasn't at the academy right now, so they had to wait for Jojo to inspect the results when he returned. "Take out all the weapons on you," Mo Lian said indifferently. Chapter 2866. Before setting off for the Sun Moon's secret realm, I'll help you reforge your weapons. Everyone was overjoyed and hastily took out their weapons, placing them in front of the Crown Prince one by one. The Crown Prince put them away into his inner world one by one and nodded at them. "I need some time." "No rush, take your time." The little fatty said with a grin, "In any case, you won't need them at the academy for the next few days." Mo Lian nodded. "Okay." Everyone chatted idly for a while. When they finished eating and came out of the private room, they bumped into the young masters and misses of the Qin estate in the neighboring room. Crown Prince Lian and Prince Chen are both here. Eldest young Sir Qin greeted them with a grin. Mo Lian and Duan Yu both looked at them expressionlessly. Were these people retarded? They had just met at the dining hall's entrance half an hour ago. Was there a need to put on a fake expression as if they had just met? Did the little stoic really return to the sovereign capital? Eldest young Sir Qin asked nonchalantly as he blinked. "What does it have to do with you?" Duan Yu and Mo Lian actually said the same thing at the same time. The two of them looked at each other, their beautiful eyes glaring at each other in annoyance. "How is it none of my business?" Ming Yasi strode towards them from the end of the corridor. "I have an extremely important matter to discuss with her. This concerns our future." Prince Mo almost retorted with vulgarities, and a cold glint appeared in his phoenix eyes. "What future do you have with my wife?" Truly a baffling fellow who lingered around like a ghost. She hated him from the moment she saw him. He was simply 10,000 times more annoying than Duan Yu. If Duan Yu could hear Prince Mo's inner thoughts, he might laugh out loud. Sigh, she didn't expect herself to be such a perfect person in Prince Mo's eyes. Ming Yasi's face darkened as he icily said, "I don't want to talk to you. I only want to talk to her." Mo Lian really wanted to punch this person in the face. Hey, don't be like this." Nether Leopard leapt out from the side, grinning as he blocked Prince Mo and Nether Ya's way. Let's talk things out. There's nothing to say to him." Mo Lian and Ming Yasi said one after another. Prince Mo couldn't help but frown. "What's going on? Why are you saying the same thing as everyone else today?" "Actually, we're all from the same academy." Before Ming Bao could finish his sentence, a loud explosion came from above the cafeteria. A slender figure fell down from the hole in the roof like a storm. He landed heavily on the ground. To be more precise, he stepped on an unlucky guy and fell to the ground in a flash. The place where they landed just happened to be on the stairs. Thus, more than half of the wooden stairs were smashed down by the two of them, and the wooden fragments were scattered everywhere. Mo Lian, Duan Yu, Ming Yasi, the young masters of the Qin estate, and the late Mu Xingqian, all the onlookers in the cafeteria were stupefied. Their gazes landed on a stoic and expressionless Sir Jojo patting the dust off his body. At the same time, they revealed extremely speechless expressions. Were they dreaming right now? That figure that fell from the sky just now was our little stoic classmate, right? Her calm and expressionless face involuntarily made them wonder if their eyes were playing tricks on them just now. Fragmented dreams. Chapter 2867. Due to the destruction of the stairs, Mo Lian, Duan Yu, and Ming Yasi, who were currently standing in the second-floor corridor, could only use the jumping method to descend the stairs. Sir Jojo was truly the center of attention right now. The little fellow stood at the bottom of the dining hall's wooden staircase. As she surveyed her surroundings, everyone's gazes uniformly landed on her. Our dear Jojo was expressionless as she calmly turned around. However, Mo Lien seemed to have noticed something. Her expression shifted, and she abruptly jumped down from the railing. Duan Yu, the little fatty, Qi Xianxian, and the rest also jumped down after her. Jojo. Mo Lien arrived beside Arbor in a flash. Just as she reached out to hold her waist, the little fellow's complexion paled, and she abruptly spat out a mouthful of blood. Jojo. Qi Xianxian and the rest reflexively exclaimed. Jojo was fine a moment ago, but she turned around and spat out blood in the next second. What's going on? Everyone's faces were filled with shock. And nothing. A severe glint flashed through Arbor's eyes. The person who hurt me is already dead. Her words implied that she had already taken revenge with her own hands. Everyone didn't understand the reason. Although they really wanted to ask what was going on, their hearts instantly tightened when they saw how she drowsily leaned into Mo Lien's arms after saying that. They quickly asked at once, "Is Jojo injured? Quickly carry her back to Donglin Garden." "I'm fine. I am just a little tired. I'll be fine after resting for a while." Arbor drowsily fell asleep. "Master." The sapling Chochio's call in her conscience gradually faded into the distance like a hazy shadow. Alarmed, Mo Lien quickly carried the little lady and turned to head for Donglin Garden. "Go, inform Mentor Zheng of the pill hall to come over and take a look." Qi Xianxian and the little fatty quickly rushed out of the dining hall to find Mentor Zheng for treatment. "Please wait, I can take a look at the Crown Princess first." Mo Lien had just arrived at the entrance of the cafeteria with Arbor in her arms when she heard the sound. She immediately turned around and looked into Do Fenghua's dark eyes. Seeing the sincerity in his eyes, Mo Lien thought for less than a second and nodded at him. This young Master Do came from a medical family and was once the last disciple of the Celestial Medical Valley's old Valley Master. His medical skills were naturally recognized by others. Since Do Fenghua had volunteered to take a look at his Jojo, he naturally agreed. Young Master Do quickly walked to the two people's side and indicated for Prince Mo to carry them to the stool next to the dining table. At this moment, no one in the cafeteria made a sound. They held their breaths as they watched the scene before them. To hell with it. A minute ago, this stoic face was still full of vigor and vitality. Now, he actually spat out a mouthful of blood and didn't look well. At this moment, when the Qin estate's eldest and second young masters saw the man's corpse at the top of the stairs, their expressions also changed slightly. The two of them looked at each other before shifting their gazes back to the corpse. That man's face had been completely caved in by a punch. His sternum had also caved in, and several ribs had pierced through his skin just like that. His death looked extremely gruesome. If it weren't for the eagle totem on his shoulder that revealed his identity, the two young masters of the Qin estate really wouldn't have recognized that this person was actually a loyalist by their father's side. What happened? Could it be that this loyalist beat Jojo until he spat out blood? Chapter 2868. It's truly strange that the Crown Princess doesn't have any traces of external injuries on her body, Do Fenghua muttered to herself. Mo Lien's heart thumped, and he imperceptibly pulled Jojo's wrist back and lifted her up again. He nodded at Do Fenghua and asked, "Are there any internal injuries?" "There are some internal injuries, but the Crown Princess should have taken some self-made medicine, so her current condition is still considered good." "That's good." Mo Lien's expression relaxed slightly. He was so anxious earlier that he lost his composure and forgot how terrifying Jojo's super recovery ability was. This point naturally couldn't be revealed to outsiders, so Mo Lian said to Do Fanghua, "Many thanks. Your Highness is too courteous. I wasn't of much help." Do Fanghua cupped her hands and took a step back. Although the Crown Princess has taken some good pills, her body is still rather weak now. It would be better for Your Highness the Crown Prince to send her back to recuperate as soon as possible. Mo Lian nodded. As he dashed out the door, he transmitted to Duanyu, "Those two from the Qin family have strange expressions. Stay here." Duanyu, who had already run to the door, suddenly paused. He frowned when he glanced at those two fellows from the Qin estate who were trying their best to maintain their composure. Mo Lian, this guy, was so observant that he was practically as meticulous as dust. During the chaos just now, Duanyu thought that he was completely focused on Jojo, but he didn't expect this guy to be able to detect even the slightest of everyone's expressions. This kind of insight simply made one's hair stand on end. Duanyu leisurely sat down at the dining table and smiled at eldest young Sir Qin across from him. "Eldest young Sir Qin, second young Sir Qin, from your expressions, it seems like you two recognize this corpse on the ground. Can you tell us who this corpse is?" A tossed stone raised 1,000 ripples, and everyone simultaneously turned to look at the young sirs from the Qin estate. Fifth young Sir Qin was baffled, and he also turned to look at his eldest and second brother. He sneered, "Your Highness Oak, don't speak without thinking, all right? This person's face has already been beaten so badly that it's unrecognizable. Who can recognize him? Really?" Duanyu gestured with his eyes, and a black-clothed youth immediately ran out from the back of the crowd. He nimbly squatted down next to the corpse and started rummaging through it. "What are you doing?" Eldest Qin's eyelids twitched. Soon, that youth in black dragged the corpse in front of Duanyu and pointed at the totem mark on the corpse's shoulder. "Your Highness, this should be the mark of a certain clan's loyalist." Duanyu had already guessed it. Since they were loyalists, they naturally wouldn't carry any items with clan characteristics. Duanyu looked at the silent Omega Kotoku young master with a sarcastic smile and asked, "Second young master, this couldn't be one of your loyalists, right? What nonsense are you babbling about?" Qin Axian abruptly looked up and coldly glanced at Duanyu. Duanyu glanced at him wordlessly with a smile. "This should be a loyalist dispatched by your Qin clan, right?" "Why?" The Omega Kotoku was silent. He also wanted to know why, but he had a vague premonition in his heart this matter should be related to his previous injury, which was caused by Jojo shooting one of his doppelgangers on Seakong Planet to death. At that time, Father flew into a rage and wanted to charge down Seakong Planet to kill the little lady for him. Her father must have recognized her at the palace banquet. That's why he... What right do you have to say that this is our Qin clan's loyalist? Qin Jiu grumbled indignantly. Chapter 2869. Silence hung in the air, and no one bothered with him. Qin Jiu pursed his lips at Duanyu. "Duanyu, you can't wrong our Qin family. Some of you know very well whether you're wronged or not." Duanyu said dryly, "Take this corpse away. Quickly look." At this time, a student suddenly shrieked as he pointed at the corpse lying stiffly on the ground. Duanyu reflexively turned around to look and saw that the suicide soldier's corpse on the ground was slowly rotting from the inside out, as if it was rotting on its own. Within a short few minutes, a shallow brown substance appeared on the ground, as if some water had been mixed into the mud. It made one's hair stand on end just by looking at it. Such a big person actually turned into a puddle of mincemeat in an instant. The students who were eating looked at their plates and silently put down their chopsticks. It truly made them vomit their dinner from last night. Duan Yu clapped and laughed, nodding as he praised, "Good skills, good methods. The Qin estate is worthy of being a century-old patrician family of elixirs." "Admirable, admirable." Qin Xian's expression was naturally extremely unsightly, and he turned to leave the dining hall with a flick of his sleeve. "I will investigate this matter thoroughly and will definitely give you all a complete explanation." The eldest young sir sighed and hastily left with him. On the other side, Prince Mo, who had just returned to Donglin Park, welcomed the Pill Hall's instructor Zheng and another instructor. "Instructor, quickly take a look at our Jojo. She vomited blood just now," Qi Xianxian hastily said, her brows completely knitted together. Instructor Zheng quickly went up to check the student's pulse and then said something similar to Dou Fanghua's. He only said that the little stoic was fine. Her body was full of vitality, and the circulation of spirit energy in her meridians was also very normal. Prince Mo's expression was unperturbed, and he quickly sent a look to the dazed Lu Yu on the side. The latter went up to salute the instructors and exchanged pleasantries along the way before asking the two instructors to leave. Prince Mo breathed a sigh of relief and said to the extremely anxious Qi Xianxian, "Jojo is fine. Jojo's recovery ability is extremely strong. I was flustered earlier and forgot about this matter. Don't tell anyone else." "All right." Qi Xianxian and the others quickly nodded in agreement. "Little ball." Prince Mo's handsome face darkened as he called out. The little Treant trembled as it crawled out from behind Arbor's shoulder. Its small eyes, which were as bright as black beans, timidly glanced at the crown prince. "What's going on?" Prince Mo's cold gaze fell on the little Treant, causing it to tremble and shake the two leaves on its head. Master, we were attacked." Mo Lian raised her eyebrows. "It's a long story." The little Trent's two branches touched each other subconsciously. "Then speak slowly." The little Treant stole a glance at Prince Mo's cold expression and stuttered as it spoke. "Actually, before noon today, everything was going very smoothly. The little Stoic's master expressionlessly accepted the 5,000 spirit coins that the Emperor sent as compensation for the employee's leave. Then, she had someone summon the family that had been thrown into jail for no reason and became a mob for a few days. That family's surname was He. They couldn't grow anything in their hometown, so they went to the capital with difficulty to make a living. There were several other families that were in the same situation as them. Their family conditions were especially difficult, and recently, they could only beg to survive. Chapter 2870. At present, he was the only strong man left in the He family. There were so many mouths in the family waiting to eat, and it was hard to find work in the capital. Therefore, he had been mingling with the refugees and beggars for a while. Who would have thought that misfortune never came singly? He was arrested and thrown into jail as a mob, and spent several days in jail for no reason. The 7 or 8-year-old boy from Old He's family hid behind his grandmother. His round eyes were filled with childlike innocence as he stared at Arbor. Arbor sized up the strong man and asked, "How many refugees like you are there in the campsite?" For the peace of the entire sovereign capital, the capital magistrate had set up several campsites in Huanlang district in the western part of the city to separate the refugees that came from the north and south. Life had not reached the point of no return, especially in a place like the Divine Land. It was still considered stable and there were no zombie outbreaks for the time being. Therefore, even if the refugees were staying in the refugee campsite, they could still eat the hot porridge and rice distributed by the imperial court every few days. "Yes, there are many people." The strong man from the He clan hurriedly said, "There are many people who came from our hometown. There are about 40 to 50 of them." Arbor nodded. "I have a job here. I wonder if you are willing to do it." The strong man from the He clan was slightly excited as he quickly said, "Crown Princess, please speak." Although he was only an ordinary person, he was full of strength. He believed that as long as he could find a job, he would definitely be able to provide for his family. "I want to hire you to mine Chess Mountain Spirit Stone Mine." Mining was a strenuous job. As long as they were trained for a day or two and grasped a certain technique, they would be able to mine. "I will pay you 50 spirit coins a day. Are you willing to do it?" The man was overjoyed at the unexpected good news. 50 spirit coins a day was basically enough to feed 2 to 3 people. It was just that they had a lot of family members, both men and women can do it. The 2 sturdy-looking middle-aged women from the He clan were overjoyed when they heard this. They immediately asked, "Crown Princess, is that true? Can we go mine too?" Generally speaking, there weren't many jobs that women could do, especially when it came to physical labor like mining. Basically, they wouldn't recruit women to work. The little Crown Princess nodded. 2 days off every month and 5 days off during festivals. "If you do well, I'll reward you. Are you willing to?" "Yes, yes." "Alright, go to the refugee camp and put up a notice. I want to recruit around 300 people." Arbor's expression was indifferent as he said, "Bring in those with good character. We don't need those who are used to sneaking around." "Yes, yes. Crown Princess, this little one understands." The He clan's burly man nodded excitedly. Arbor turned to glance at Huifeng. "I'll leave it to you." Huifeng rubbed his nose and could only lead the happy family out to handle some matters. Although Auntie Jing didn't say it, she truly admired this little crown princess from the bottom of her heart. This young crown prince consort looked cold and didn't seem to be a very kind person in her usual actions. However, everything she did was in the direction of leading people onto the path of the Great Tao. The imperial court's occasional relief could only provide some refugees with basic food and clothing. In essence, the root of the problem was to find them a stable job. This way, they would naturally have a stable source of income every month. They would no longer need to wander around the imperial capital as beggars or refugees. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.